besides Bitcoin DeFi and besides partner chains, because I would say those are two of the biggest, most important things to focus on that differentiate Cardano. Besides those things, what are one or two other things that you believe are dire for the Cardano community to focus on in the next few years?
Well, we got to fix broken windows, and that's why Midnight was such a great project, because Cardano was a bit of a mystical island that nobody ever wanted to go and visit, you know, a different kind of island.
Okay.
Yeah, not the other island. No, cut the mic. But Cardano was like this island that nobody would visit, and what Midnight did is it fixed the broken windows. So we got all these custodians to integrate, all these wallets to integrate, exchanges start caring about it, especially the native assets on it. And we need to fix things like get better stablecoin support and get better Oracle support and these types of things, but those will happen. They're organic and natural, and eventually we will get there. The other side of it is that we have to start getting some real-world products into the Cardano ecosystem, like reinsurance products, lending products, especially microfinance products. There's some real-world touch points that you see here at this event that if we continue to invest and grow are going to be very exciting. Like that vending machine we have right over there. That vending machine is connected to the Hydra network. So when you tap your phone and get a Louis Vuitton purse out of it or get a laptop out of it, which by the way, it is in there. You can get a purse or a laptop, so you should check it out. That vending machine is a proof of concept for point of sale. So that's every ATM, that's every cash register, and that's every vending machine in the world could be engaged with that. Instant feeless. That's something that's Cardano exclusive with Hydra. We will connect one day Hydra to Lightning Network through a technology called Thundercloud. So we look 3 to 5 years, you say, okay, we're covering the whole banana. We're talking about real world transactions in real life. Tap your phone, it just works, it's instant and feeless. That's perfect for the stablecoin world and every sale event. We're talking about intellectual property. You look at the Stuff.io model. As that continues to grow and thrive, it's going to bring all these things and create a world where you as an author, when you distribute your book, you're distributing a book as if it's a physical book, but in a digital, and the buyer owns that copy. Amazon can't show up and just take it out of your Kindle. You have all this depend stuff that people are talking about, like Iagon, for example, which is decentralized storage, and we're adjacent with World Mobile, and you know they're still floating around doing interesting things, and that's an idea of building a decentralized cell phone network. So watching those things grow, transform into real world assets, enter the real world and be usable on your phone, that's the mile that we're looking for, and we're getting it done. We know the base technologies, we know the user experience, and the ecosystem is moving very quickly for that.
When I think of decentralized, I think of Bitcoin and Cardano, two of the most decentralized networks in crypto. But if you were king and you could snap your fingers and do whatever you wanted, how would you stimulate the DeFi and stablecoin ecosystem?
Well, the stablecoin ecosystem was a bit curtailed because we had an unorthodox model. First, it's hard for an EVM system to be natively UTXO compatible, but those will get resolved soon enough. Second, how it works with normal cryptocurrencies is the governing foundation has a big pile of money. They pay an integration fee, and then they go mint $300–400 million of stablecoin. They trade with it. That doesn't work in our ecosystem for a variety of reasons. So the good news is we have an on-chain treasury, and it can be utilized for these types of things, and there's a proposal on the table for it. And the good news is we also have a lot of homegrown options like USDM and USDA and others that if we invest in and we build up, it will bridge the gap and kind of walk a ladder to Circle and Tether like instruments getting into our ecosystem. So it is something we deeply care about at Input-Output, and we've done a lot from strategic investments to mentoring and working with some of these different entities, to also just having conversations with the big guys about what that ladder walking is going to look like, as well as putting our support behind the Cardano Sovereign Wealth Fund concept to move some of the treasury in from ADA into stablecoins to kind of prime that pump and get that distribution that we need. The other thing is it's not good enough just to have stablecoin, you have to pair it with yield products. So where do you get the lending? Where do you get the RWA? So Midnight's going to bring a ton of RWAs into the Cardano orbit because of the privacy capability and the selective disclosure and compliance capabilities of it. Because almost all these RWAs, they look, act, or are securities. And securities require broker-dealers and disclosure regimes and segregated markets and these types of things. Well, having computational privacy, which is what Midnight does, it gives you the ability to do that. And then suddenly, all this Cardano stuff is now adjacent to a large RWA set, so you have yield products waiting for those stablecoins to exist. But here's the most interesting part. Bitcoin DeFi, by its existence, creates a ton of stablecoins. And here's how. You have Bitcoin. The silent rule number 4 about Bitcoin is Bitcoiners don't want to sell their Bitcoin. Hold Bitcoin. Don't sell your Bitcoin. Always hodl. Well, how do you participate in DeFi if you don't sell your Bitcoin? You lend it. So you lend the Bitcoin, turns into a stablecoin, deploy the stablecoin somewhere. So there's a very strong virtuous circle where Bitcoin coming into the Cardano orbit would use DeFi applications to lend to a stablecoin, deploy a stablecoin to these yield products, get a yield, paid back in Bitcoin, and then go back to Bitcoin when they're all said and done. So I think that circuit, if we invest in that circuit as an ecosystem, we make it friction-free, organically as we get Bitcoin TVL, we also at the same time get stablecoin TVL. And that can be billions of dollars, if it's done correctly. So I'm really excited about that, and it's great for Bitcoiners because they never have to sell their Bitcoin. They can keep their underlying asset.
And you say Bitcoin this cycle, you believe can get up to $250,000. You've said that before.
Yeah.
What drives that? And does this cycle end at the end of the year or into 2026?
2026, and the inventories are just too low. I mean, everybody's buying it. You have all these DATs, and you have these sovereign funds and other people, and there's just not enough Bitcoin being produced. So it's a supply and demand mechanic. And if you take a look at the buy volume and the Wall Street demand that's coming, there's just simply put not enough Bitcoin to go around. So if you look at the models, it's somewhere in that 150 to 300,000, and the expected value kind of sits around that 250 mark. And we've already achieved a great deal. And what's nice is once Bitcoin stalls, then people are I'm not getting enough love in Bitcoin, so then it leaks into the alts. So that's what creates the GigaChad bull run for that. And I think the big push is going to be the Clarity Act being passed. And that'll probably be passed around September to October. And then once that's in market, the Mag 7 will come in, other people will come in, and everybody will just start taking a little bit of crypto in their treasury management, the Fortune 500. And these are trillion-dollar companies, and so by extension, that demand is just simply put too high. The driver for Bitcoin DeFi is if all these large institutions hold Bitcoin, they're going to want, as a CFO, to create yield for that. They just don't want to have an opportunity cost of holding an asset that's passive and doesn't do anything. So if somebody comes in and says, you can click this toggle and work with a third-party treasury management firm and get 5 or 6% like a T-bill on your Bitcoin at a relatively low risk, they'll be like, yeah, I'll do that for 20 or 30% of my inventory. And maybe that's $200 million or $300 million. Sum that across the whole Fortune 500, that's a TVL of probably 50 to 100 billion just off of that. So the numbers work very well for Bitcoin.
I understand for this next question, you have no control of this, but do you expect we'll see Cardano treasury companies, and is that something you would like to see?
It's inevitable, but I'll have more to say in a bit.
Interesting. Charles, when you are alone at the end of the day, just you, what keeps you up at night? What are you scared of?
Flying cobras. I think the biggest issue is when you're a CEO in a technology space, you're haunted by two things: the things that you miss and the bets you make. So when you look at technology, there's 26 ways you can do everything. It's like trying to put your pants on 26 different ways. Eventually you figure it out. And you at some point have to make a bet, in zero knowledge. Do I bet on elliptic curves, hashes, or lattices? So am I a snark man, am I a lattice man, or am I an elliptic curve man? And if you bet right, you have a multi-billion-dollar product. If you bet wrong, no one uses your technology and it falls apart. So every single thing in the roadmap is a collection of trade-offs and bets. And I sweat at night thinking, did we make the right bet? And we don't know. We won't know for 3 to 5 years. Vitalik seems to be this giga genius, but then he wakes up every day saying, we need UTXO, and we need liquid non-custodial staking, and we maybe need some on-chain governance. Like, yeah, duh. And we made those bets in 2017. He has enough network effect he can recover from it, but those missteps are very expensive and time-consuming. The things you miss are where your imagination wasn't broad enough and you just basically got the market wrong. You're like, oh, shit, actually everybody's doing this thing instead of this other thing. So there's been numerous times where we assumed the market would behave a certain way, or we assumed some things would be a certain way. Like Solana is a great example of this, where they had this big surge, FTX happened, they burst and collapsed down, but they caught the meme coin wave. And none of us in the industry were really thinking too much about it. We're like, yeah, we've seen meme coins. It's kind of like NFTs and Dogecoin. We didn't really take meme coins that seriously for the most part. Even Ethereum really didn't. And then suddenly all these meme coins come on Solana, which brought tens of millions of users in. It brought enormous amounts of volumes in, and it recovered the market cap and it rebuilt the ecosystem. And it was the lifeline that they needed to revitalize, and it gave them that bridge to become a legit DeFi platform. Now, we could have invested heavily in meme coin mania and done all these things and built some meme coin products, Charles with hat or something like that. I mean, there was Nike, he's a good pick. But it wasn't something we took as seriously as we needed to, and that's a failure to imagine, where these things can come. So as a CEO in a technology space, you always are straddling those two things. What did you miss, and what did you bet on that may not be the right bet? Now, even if you bet perfectly, and even if you don't miss anything, you could still mistime the market. That's the third thing that is always challenging. So mistiming is like Steve Ballmer is the greatest example in the history of technology. Ballmer knew the iPhone, something like it, was going to be awesome. But when he put all the models together, they were betting 2009. Why? Because that was their anticipation for 3G. That was when the programmability was going to be where it was at. That's where the price point was going to be around $200 to $250. He didn't understand that Steve Jobs had this MacGuffin where he convinced AT&T to upgrade their network faster and make 2007 instead of 2009. And also business model innovation, where a $600 phone would be subsidized by the cell phone seller to be a $250 phone. You see, so because he didn't have those two facts and those two imaginations, he mistimed the market. So you always have to know, when is the market going to be ready for this thing? And Bitcoin DeFi is a great example of that. A lot of people like Rootstock, they bet early, very long time ago, and they mistimed it. I actually experienced this in my career. I created BitShares before Ethereum with Dan Larimer. We were the first algorithmic stablecoin, and we were the first DEX back in 2013. Nobody cared because there was no DeFi market. But look at Uniswap today. Look at MakerDAO, which some of the MakerDAO guys ended up being BitShares guys. They started from that community. So we mistimed the market. We were too early. Ethereum was perfectly timed. EOS was too late to the market for the model that it was in. Had BitShares been EOS, BitShares would have dominated and won. So as a CEO, you always look at that timing, the failure to imagine, and the bets that you got wrong.
Charles, final question, and then before we both leave, I want to grab a picture with you on stage.
Sure.
But you and me, we're on stage 1 year from now in RareEvo. Give me a prediction, whether it's Bitcoin DeFi or partner chain, something a little specific on what we will see 1 year from now.
Well, first we'll be, sad that Vitalik retired after Cardano flipped it. The internet's gonna have fun with that one. But levity aside, I want to win, damn it. Levity aside, Midnight will be launched. The partner chains ecosystem will be very fertile and more will be on the way. Bitcoin DeFi will be operating in some capacity and integrated in multiple wallets. A lot of great new products. The TVL will be significantly higher on Cardano. The DevX will be significantly better on Cardano. It will be a Plus V4. We'll be working towards Leos and getting that turned on. Hydra will be entering its second generation, but overall it'll just be a much smoother ecosystem and a much more consumer-friendly ecosystem and balanced ecosystem overall. And hopefully we can be talking about all these next-gen apps and how successful they are and how they're all listed on exchanges. And everybody's like, wow, Cardano is so cool, and there's a sexy kid again. So that's what we'll be talking about.
I love it. Charles Hoskinson, everybody. Give it up.
Thank you, guys.
Solana panel where we'll be talking about everything Solana. I'm your host, Bangerz. I'm a content creator and builder on Solana, and I'm joined with some lovely panelists today. We're going to have a great discussion about Solana. We have Katya from Wormhole, Margie from Solayer, and Matt, who's the VP of Technology at the Solana Foundation. Yeah, there we go. Give it up for our great panelists. All right. So I'm going to pass it off to our panelists, and we're just going to go down the line and give us a little introduction about yourself, maybe how you got into crypto, and what you're currently working on.
I'm happy to start. Hi, everybody. My name is Katya. I'm the head of growth at the Wormhole Foundation. For those of you who don't know, Wormhole is an interoperability protocol that facilitates the passing of messages across different blockchains. We were actually initially built as a hackathon project, as a bridge connecting Ethereum and Solana, and we've grown to support over 40 blockchains today. I personally have been working in this space for about 5 years now, mostly in the DeFi space. I started my career working at Maple Finance, doing institutional loans on chain, then spent some time working at Aave, launched a stablecoin, which was a lot of fun. Worked at Polygon more recently, building out their DeFi ecosystem, and now supporting all of the BD and strategy initiatives at Wormhole.
My name is Margie Feng. I work at Solayer as the marketing director. So at Solayer, we're building the fastest L1 blockchain, targeting 1 million plus TPS. We just launched our bridge, and our testnet is coming very soon, and we are actively looking for builders to deploy on our Solayer chain. On top of that, we also have a Emerald crypto Visa card where you can spend crypto everywhere, anywhere you want. So personally, I only got into Solana for like 5 months. Previously, I worked in a Web3 security company called Fuzzlet, which was later acquired by Solayer. So that's why I joined Solayer. And before Fuzzlet, I worked in the crypto mining industry. I worked at GIM.MEME before. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Matt Sorg. I originally started my career in games. So I worked for Riot Games, and when I was there, we did a lot of esports and a bunch of stuff around the world where we encountered a bunch of problems paying and certifying that the tournament providers actually paid out their players and a bunch of things, and more is like, I think blockchain solves this. This is back in 2017, so I actually left Riot with a few colleagues and started a game store. It was on Ethereum, and we actually did okay, but the underlying infrastructure got more expensive as we got more users, so the business didn't really scale. And so we fast-failed that, yada, yada, yada. A few years later, as I was looking at like opportunities within the industry to make applications, Solana just stuck out as the place that I would build my company again. And that's kind of why I joined, because instead of just starting my company again, I thought, why not just help out the whole Solana ecosystem? And that was about 4.5 years ago now. So, really building out since then, and setting up apps for success.
Amazing. I also had kind of maybe a similar journey, not with games, but with art. That was kind of how I got into NFTs, through my art. I was an artist, posting art on Instagram and Ethereum, and then I had, similar struggles with using Ethereum, and then finding Solana, I really just kind of like understood it. The UX was there for me, and then so I kind of jumped in more fully into Web3, and now doing more content and also building on Solana. So yeah, and I'm curious, with Solana, like for me, I'll start and answer the question, right? Which is, what is like something that like stood out to you about Solana? Because like when you're getting into Web3, I feel like it is really confusing, right? That initial journey, there's like a lot of tech, a lot of hurdles you have to kind of overcome. And for me, I was like a solo founder in Web2. So what I really loved about Solana was like instantly connecting with people online, and it was kind of like the community for me. But I'm curious if you guys have anything, even if it's the same answer, what is kind of like that story that is that sort of shiny thing that really stuck with you and made you kind of love Solana?
I'm happy to start. I think historically, people have given Solana a lot of shit. Everybody has something to say about like downtime or the roadmap. But what I've really loved about the Solana ecosystem is if you have something negative to say, the community wants to work with you to figure out how to fix it. And I think that openness and that willingness has attracted a lot of builders. It's helped expedite the growth of Solana. And it's really created a welcome community for people who are looking to build in the blockchain space. So it's really a testament to the community that the Solana team has founded.
So for me, what I like about Solana is actually shown on this panel, the ratio, because in other panels I've participated in, it's always the other way around. It's more guys over girls, and now it's a panel that I really, really like. So the other thing is that before I joined Solana, I also heard a lot of shit. People are calling it like a meme chain. And it's always a lot of scams. But actually, after I got into it, I was surprised and impressed by how many innovations are happening every day, how all the projects are really working together to create new user experiences, innovations, creation. So that's what I really like about Solana. And we work with Wormhole, we do co-marketing together. It's just a community that's really helping each other out and really building some real things together.
Yeah, you kind of stole my answer. No, it's the combination of being very deeply technical, the amount of complex algorithms and data structures, and we're even changing the consensus algorithm to a very, very academic, well-vetted, provable algorithm. So you have that side, but we don't overly market that. It's that coupled with being very practical. And the practical thing is what we need to serve is users and applications to make use of the technology. So that's mostly what you see, and a lot of people don't like what they see because it's meme coins and stuff a lot today. But there's plenty of industries that are really starting to grow, and it's just because things tend to flow where there is low friction. You have permissionless access. It really is decentralized infrastructure of anybody can access it, anybody can host their node, and operate their business. And so it's really that combination of both, very functional and heavy research, heavy deep tech.
Actually, I'm just going to chime in on that. I think Solana as meme coin mania has been a lot of fun, but it's also shown how many real users there are on Solana, right? Like if you look at, I obviously look a lot at bridging volumes to see where real users are moving their capital and where they want to be transacting. Solana is a massive home for that. And then when you think about institutions and all of these different payment providers who want to engage with the blockchain space, they're looking at Solana as the first home for that because that's where the real users are. So that's just the both sides of the same coin on how great Solana is.
Yeah, meme coins, right? It's a fun time on Solana. It gets a bit chaotic. And yeah, Solana really does have a rep for, you've heard it, but call it the meme coin casino, right? Which, it's great, right? The users, that's awesome. But I'm curious to hear, what are some other kind of maybe underrepresented aspects of Solana that you feel just don't get enough love, right? These meme coins are taking the majority of attention. Maybe it's something specifically from your project or another, or just a sector of the industry in general that you think should be having more attention.
I'm happy to start us off. I touched on this briefly earlier, but I think institutional volume is huge, right? I think a lot of teams who are looking at engaging with public blockchains for the very first time. BlackRock is a great example of this. We work with BlackRock today to help them take BUIDL across different blockchains, and between them and Hamilton Lane and all these other teams who are thinking about tokenization, all of them are asking about Ethereum, of course, but they're also seriously considering Solana as their home where they want to deploy native issuance on, and they want to continue to build on. So increasingly institutions are looking at Solana as a safe and decentralized place that they can build obviously the tokenization piece is cool, but we're also starting to see practical on-chain payment solutions that Solana's speeds actually enable to happen, right? Like if you tap your credit card, you know, you're buying some, trying to gamble today, you know, we're here in Vegas, that transaction time is fast, right? You don't even realize that it's happening. And we want to be able to facilitate the same level of speeds and that same user experience of, I want to tap my card, I want to send money to my friends, and I want to make sure that my tokens get transferred securely, safely, and quickly. And Solana's infrastructure allows us to get to a very similar speed, hopefully even faster soon.
Yeah, like Katya said, I think Solana is shifting from retail-oriented to institution-ready environment, and we are actively working towards making it scalable and also institution-ready. And just talking about the speed, for Solayer, we're targeting like 1 million plus TPS, and now our DevNet is live, so we're reaching 100K plus. So we are working towards to scale on-chain finance, and we also have the card. So basically, really fast transaction. You can just use it on your phone through Apple Pay, Google Pay, and just tap it, like using crypto without even noticing that you're using crypto, and that's one part of mass adoption that also draws the attention from the institutions as well.
Yeah, so Solana on any given day will do more transactions than all other public blockchains combined. So it is true that meme coins are a lot of that, but there's still plenty of other stuff that is happening that also is very large relative to the rest of the industry. So something like Helium has 300,000 daily active users connecting, that they basically serve decentralized internet through translating Wi-Fi into 5G networks, and T-Mobile has a plan through them, and then there's a lot of data routing. So both in that data, when it hits the Helium nodes, they get a payout on Solana. So, and that's happening every day. You know, 300,000 plus individual accounts get hit a day, and they have something like 1,000 total nodes. So, or sorry, 1 million total nodes. So like millions of users on both the user side and the infrastructure side interact with Solana. And so that's just one example. You know, there's plenty of other deep in Geo.net, Zandium right over there. They do like data hosting. So there's this whole new capital efficient market that is being formed where people can raise capital and do some model based on some physical infrastructure, some other business model. And it's really hard to do that with traditional rails because you have to pay a bunch of money, or it's not really transparent to the buyers what they're actually buying. But when everything's in code, you say, oh, I can buy this node, I just serve my internet, or I serve this data, or I collect, I serve this GPU and I get paid in this fashion. And all those things are very much growing as industries. And and then there's completely like less sexy things but very functional, like payments and just major asset to major asset trading volumes. So we just expect that again these things flow, like financial things flow to low friction. So I like to say, like, Solana didn't choose meme coins chose Solana. So as there's more things that need just more efficient finance, just things will flow to this infrastructure.
Totally, I agree with that. DePIN is definitely one of my favorite, I think just probably my favorite use case of crypto in general. So I think like we talk a lot about like mass adoption, right? And I think like meme coins is probably not gonna do that, right? There's a winner and there's a loser. And so those losers feel shitty when they lose and they might not wanna come back. But DePIN is, I'm gonna pick an industry, go there and get real people, provide them a solution that otherwise doesn't exist, which I think Matt said it really well. And then supply and demand is also really interesting too, because with meme coins, Solana is attention capital markets, which is great and fun, but DePIN actually has a supply and demand, right? It's connecting those two, which I think is super exciting, especially when we look at mass adoption. Like, what does it take to get everyone in the world using a crypto wallet, right? When I entered Solana, I thought it would happen instantly. And now after going on 3 years in the space, it's wow, okay, we're just now kind of getting there. So my question for the panel,
To use that, to experience it. Yeah, that's what mass adoption means to me.
Yeah, I think my dad understands what Bitcoin is, but I think that's as far as we've made it so far.
Yeah.
I think USDC, well, that's a next year problem. I think mass adoption is really interesting. I think when we're in this like crypto bubble, we get so enamored by all the different protocols that are being built. Don't get me wrong, I love the Wormhole branding. We worked very hard on it. I don't want you to know that you're using it, right? Like I'd love for some of these protocols to like really just start to fade into the background and for users to stop having to make decisions on which lending markets they're going to interact with and which like bridge they're going to use to transfer assets. I think the simpler and more digestible we can make this, more similar to the Web 2 experience, that's really the future that I want us to work towards, and we've made great strides in working towards. I think a couple years ago, we've been talking about chain abstraction forever. Like it's almost memeable on crypto Twitter at this point. Nobody really knows what it means, but finally with faster settlement times and the innovations that are being made on like the blockchain level, you're really starting to get people who know they like a product, they know they like a token, they like their wallet, but they don't really have to understand all of the complexities powering it. They just need to know that their money was one place, their USDC was one place, and now it's somewhere else. And that really helps people get comfortable with the space and helps get people who aren't super technical excited about using crypto.
Yeah, I totally agree. People shouldn't know that they're using a crypto app, right? I think that's kind of like the ends all be all. Of course, obviously having an appreciation for the technology and that kind of education is great, but there's just so many hurdles that a user has to jump through to kind of like understand crypto. And this is one of the things that I really like about Solana is that I feel because it is fast, it does have a lot of cool aspects of technology that really makes those barriers a lot lower. One of my favorites, I spoke earlier that I came into Solana through NFTs. And so one of my favorite parts of the Solana technology are compressed NFTs. And if you're not familiar with these, basically Matt might know a lot more and be able to explain it technically, but you can make a lot of NFTs, millions of NFTs, okay, for a little bit of money. And that, especially if you're building kind of in games, you want to have tradable assets, right? These kind of like consumer apps that want to bring ownership to their users. That is really awesome because you can completely abstract the cost away from the user, and instead of the user having to pay, $5 to put this asset on chain so they can own it, it becomes free, frictionless. They don't even know that they're signing a transaction. So yeah, I'm pretty bullish on Solana's technology, but I want to throw it back to Matt. I'm curious, is there some kind of, technology of Solana that's sort of hiding that might need to be a little bit more appreciated, or you could see becoming this big thing?
Well, it would be a big thing in terms of the user experience, but kind of like what you've been saying is, we also don't necessarily want to be in the forefront as the brand or anything like that. We just want awesome applications to be able to build on top. And we're very much very rapidly increasing the protocol. We've already increased it over 25% this year, probably going to double it. That's in a future release. It's like on testnet right now, so not something theoretical, and hopefully as much as 10x next year. While we're also upgrading consensus, it's called Alpenglow. The paper's out. It's actually pretty human readable. It's a fairly simple protocol, and therefore it's actually provable that it satisfies under Byzantine fault tolerant conditions, that it is a safe spec and a very, very, very performant spec that will reach finality in about 100 to 150 milliseconds. So just that's full finality. So very good user experience stuff. Helps a lot with bridges. They don't have to worry as much about reorg risk or other attack vectors. And then other things around, client diversity, Firedancer coming out, just like a hyper efficient network. I could really go on forever. Like this is a very large ecosystem with a lot of amazing technologies being developed in parallel that, again, hopefully the user doesn't have to care about what exactly enabled this thing, but they're just seeing exposure to a new market or a new type of asset or something that they can, have fun with.
Cool, really cool. Yeah, I think there's a lot. I mean, look at where we've gotten, right? Solana is like what, 5 years old?
Yeah.
5 years old, right? This industry is still so new. We are still early, right? Kind of something we said in the early days, but I still feel like, right, we are now kind of entering a more rapid pace, at least I feel, where there's these new headlines, right? It's like, oh, okay, you know, more institutions, all of this getting involved. So it's super exciting to see just like the way that crypto is being adopted, and especially in Solana, having that kind of like ground floor view. But I'm curious, Katya, you have more of a kind of like overview of like all the chains. It's not just Solana, because Wormhole is, you know, this bridge. So I'm curious, do you have any kind of insights over where are people bridging? What's going on? What is this future, if it's multi-chain, looking like?
Yeah, multi-chain is a very interesting topic. Everybody wants to build everywhere. Everybody wants to be able to meet their, you know, potential users wherever they are. A lot of that results in teams starting to do siloed deployments on multiple different blockchains, and then, you know, all of these different protocols exist in different spaces, but they don't really communicate with one another. Historically, I mean, multi-chain and interoperability has really grown a lot in the last few years, but 2 years ago it was a pain if you wanted to build like a truly multi-chain protocol. Different run times, different VMs, it makes it really difficult for people to think about that. So we're starting to see a consolidation of people wanting to be opinionated in where they build their home deployment, their hub, and then using interoperability rails to go cross-chain. And a lot of these chains are, a lot of these protocols, a lot of these teams are thinking about Solana. They want to be able to access users across different blockchains, but ultimately, because of the speed and the security and the decentralization of Solana, that's where they are choosing to build their home more and more, which has been really exciting to see. We're neutral. Obviously, we love Solana, but just objectively, if you look at Wormhole scan, you can see how much volume is flowing like in and out of Solana every day, and that's real users who are moving their real tokens, and that's really impressive to see.
Totally. And yeah, we're at a multi-chain crypto conference. Shout out RareEvo. We're super excited. We're bullish on multi-chain, and we're super excited to be here. This was Everything Solana. Thank you to our audience.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, we're going to a break and then coming back.
that's extraordinary. I wish that more of technology would be close to magical. And I feel AI will help us do that. We actually have some good things about which we'll probably share, but
yeah, I want to get into AI with you, but before I do that, I do want to move on to Chris Baird from Project Catalyst. Project Catalyst is essentially a funding mechanism to power projects, not just on Cardano, but multi-chains as well. So coming from a place where, you know, you're about to make a selection from X amount of projects, you know, how do you make that selection? Like if there's 1,000 of you, you have to narrow it down to 5. What's that process like? And then once you have chosen the projects, how do you keep them accountable to do what they said they're going to do?
Yeah, hi everybody. It's a really good question. For those of you that don't know about Catalyst, great setup by AJ, but it really has powered Cardano's startup ecosystem over the last 5 years. We've run 13 funding rounds. We're currently in the middle of funding Fund 14 with 20 million ADA available for proposals coming from anywhere in the community. But you know, to answer your question, it's really community driven and decentralized from the start right through to the finish. Anyone from the community can submit proposals. The community then review those proposals against criteria of impact, feasibility, and value for money, and then the community votes on them. So, you know, to some extent, we might think of this as like an evolution of the DAO idea, really. But what we're seeing, what we've proven within Catalyst and Cardano is this can be done at scale. We're seeing like 1,500 to nearly 2,000 proposals coming in every single funding round now. And of those, we're funding, you know, about 200 to 300 projects every single round, right? We've funded 2,091 projects, equivalent to $150 million worth of ADA in the last 4 years. It's pretty amazing.
You said 2,000, what's that number again?
2,091 projects. And there's people here that are in the audience right now that are funded projects themselves. So, you know, you ask about the accountability, like how do you keep 2,000 projects honest and delivering on their commitments? Well, again, you turn to the community, right? So we put in place a model which allows the project teams to get funded to reach their first milestone. Once they reach their first milestone, they come back and deliver proof of achievement, which the community then need to sign off on. It's a really simple process. You show up, you deliver what you said you were going to deliver, you show people what you're delivering, they sign off on it, you get the green light to move forward. If you don't deliver what you say you're going to do, guess what's going to happen? People are going to run your name through the dirt, unfortunately, because we live in this hyper-social, hyper-communicative society now. So if you aren't delivering on your promises, you better believe that you've got a community behind you that are going to be tapping you on the back saying, why haven't you done what you said you were going to do? And guess what? It works. We've funded, as I said, over 2,000 projects, and like nearly 90% of them come back and can complete their commitments. And the ones that don't, it's often for reasons like technology immaturity, or the team falls out, or frankly, someone dies and you just can't complete the project. It's not normally because people who just run off into the sunset because they know the consequences of doing that.
I think that's really fair. I mean, we've all seen in crypto the rise and fall of projects, the rise and fall of influencers, and accountability is everything in our space, in my opinion, because we have to keep each other honest, and without an honest environment, like what are you going to do? Benny, I do want to circle back to you because we're talking about onboarding the next billion users onto crypto. My question to you is, are they humans?
This is a great question. I think we're probably going to see much faster the advent of 1 billion agents on chain rather than 1 billion humans. And this is not to say that I don't want humans to join and to have some fun and to benefit of these opportunities and technologies. But I just think that once you realize how valuable it will become to have an agent that does work for you, that does maybe trading for you, that just as you have a Tesla that now becomes a robotaxi, your agent will be the person you send to do work today. And then once that agent starts to be productive, because it has a wallet, because it can do work for you, the question is, can you have 2 agents? And then can you have 10 agents? And I think that's the flip switch where companies from wherever they will be in the world will start buying those agents, and some companies will start selling those agents equipped with these tools that can just surf the internet and do stuff for you.
I think it's an interesting topic, and we talked about the roadmap, but agentic commerce is a core part of our roadmap, and it raises interesting questions because, you know, how can you trust an agent, right? Like, are you going to give an agent access to your private keys and $1 million account and just let it go crazy? And so the way I think this is going to work is that you need some sort of a identity and security framework that lives on chain to make sure that the agent behaves properly and that the agent also has accountability associated with it. And so the agent will need an ID, but also the agent needs a trust model behind it, right? And ultimately, it's going to have to come back to the human, because ultimately it's the human. You cannot sue the agent in court for misbehaving, right? You can sue the human, so you need to have some sort of an accountability for these agents. They need to have a trust model associated with it that links it back to a human, and then their behavior will need to be constrained on chain so that they can't misbehave, that they behave within the constraints that are set by the human. So ultimately, I think there's always going to be a human behind the scenes in these things.
I mean, I'll be honest, guys, this scares the bejesus out of me that we're talking about the next billion users being all agents, right? If we're, to believe that maybe 60% of the job market is going to get decimated with the advent of AI, that's a really scary problem that we need to solve for, right? We as humans need to take back more control, and we need to be more responsible and accountable for decision making that we're already outsourcing to people that we really probably shouldn't, right? So when I think about where the next billion users come from, really it's about, for me, it's how can we enable people to make more decisions around causes that they care about, right? When people ask me what I do for a job, I say, if you could play more of an active role in helping to decide how funds are spent towards causes you care about, do you want to play that role? Right? If you were given the opportunity to vote on things, and it was at your fingertips, and it was as commonplace as sending a tweet or posting on social media, but it was towards things that you actually care about, would you want to or not? I think most people would say they probably would, right? You start taking more control of shaping the world around you, and actually, in not too distant future, we could see that we're actually contributing to the voting and the governance and the shaping of the societies that we really do want to see, rather than outsourcing all of our decision making to agents or to people that really don't represent our own interests.
100%. So just to elaborate a bit on this, I'm not as pessimistic as it may seem on humans after all. In fact, I believe that AI tools today grant humans possibilities that just years ago they could not even imagine. And in fact, we've built one tool that's called ViboX that essentially enables anyone, wherever they may be, to create an application by writing in English. That's, to me, the type of technology that we need more of, where technology feels more like magic. And then what does this tool effectively do? Well, on the one hand, I believe there's thousands, maybe hundreds or thousands of ideas that we have throughout our lives, and we die with them. These ideas remain stuck in our head. They never see the light. And so improving maybe 100x the number of ideas that see the light, that's extraordinary for humanity. That gives us more opportunities, more creativity, and then more things we can actually contribute to the world. That's one thing. The second thing is this idea that if you look at this entire space, one thing that we care a lot about, and maybe I almost care only about this as we speak, is distribution. And the question is, what's the real bottleneck for the entire blockchain space maybe? And one way to look at this is it has always been developers. Developers are brilliant. We love them. Some of them are geniuses, and that's extraordinary. But at the end of the day, there's only so much. only so many developers that you can work with and so on. So the question is, how can you create a tool that enables anyone, whether they're artists, teachers, singers, whatever else, creators, they can become builders. And builders are just people from around the world that can use an AI to deploy an app with the speed that is unparalleled. And maybe the last point is just compressing the time to market, taking it from years when you fund a project and then wait years and it comes online. With this tool, you can take it to hours. The person takes it and then magically looks at something and they cannot believe that this is possible. So that's more, I think we should have more of that.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, to give you an example, we just completed a hackathon with Bolt, and Bolt is one of these vibe coding, AI vibe coding tools. So we were their blockchain partner, and so this hackathon had over 100,000 developers and builders. And so it's totally amazing what you see what happens when, and so they built, Bolt is basically this full stack system that uses AI to kind of build these apps. Now,
maybe next time you can use VibeOX.
So I don't think they can build smart contracts. And we have several people from Algorand in the audience that probably agree with me that Bolt wouldn't be able to create a smart contract yet. But they are able to create these phenomenal user experiences and phenomenal user interfaces and front ends that when you look at it, it's really an opportunity for developers to really build out their idea and build out the concept fine enough so you can actually see how it would work and how the integrate. And we need more of that within crypto. We need more than just the back end and highly research-oriented kind of project management. We need kind of user interfaces that are friendly to use, that are good to use, and AI can be a great tool. Can be a great tool for that.
Yeah, maybe I'll take another approach. Like, I don't think we've really seen the golden era of utility yet, right? Most of the crypto industry for the last decade has really been centered around open, public, permissionless blockchains, right? But when we think about what's really important, there's elements of like what you as an individual are happy to give out as your public truth. But then there's elements that you would want to maybe retain some level of privacy. So there's a private truth that, that's required, right?
The answer is yes.
Yeah, so we need to have more, I guess, utility which is based around sort of this understanding that we are going to be keeping things private, that we haven't quite seen the mass adoption or, you know, large-scale enterprise like just shifting all their infrastructure to blockchain because we need these privacy-enabled layers, right? Once we've got more of this maturity around privacy-preserving layers, then there will be a shift between, there'll be things that will be open and public and permissionless, like, you know, is your government spending, you know, your tax money in the right ways? Well, you'd absolutely want that to be open and public and transparent. But then, you know, for enterprises or anything that you're doing personally, you probably would want to keep most of that private, right? So it's just about, I think, maturity of where we are. We're not quite there yet, but we're heading towards the state of maturity within the infrastructure.
And you, all three of you, have made a lot of good points about, you know, let's get back to the main question here. How are we going to bring the next billion users into crypto? Well, if you look at the Google trends across the board from when we were at the height of the previous bull run in 2021 and look at the same Google trends now, we're not even close to where we were back in 2021. The catch is now we have twice as many users. So really, I mean, mass adoption's crypto's two favorite words, but I think, you know, people getting excited, that always works. That without a doubt works. So my question to all three of you, we have about 3.5 minutes left on this panel here. Make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. What's the catalyst? What's the catalyst?
Well, I don't think there's like one single kind of like app that will just set the world on fire.
Sure.
I think it's like, to me, the way I think about this is like blockchain will be successful when it disappears. As long as it's visible to the user, it will not be successful. And to give you an example, we just launched a complete on-chain loyalty program for chess players with worldchess.com. And so World Chess has over 1 million chess players. They all have Algorand accounts. They all have their points stored on Algorand. But nobody knows Algorand is in there other than a little badge that says powered by Algorand. right? And that's the only visibility that you have on the blockchain. The user experience is Web 2-like. People log in the normal way they log in, they get access to their points, they can do whatever they want, but it is, the blockchain kind of have disappeared. And I think that's how you get to mass adoption. So we're bringing 1 million chess players online, right? Maybe online poker will launch a similar loyalty program. Maybe we'll have 5 million poker players that go online, right? That go on chain, and powered by Algorand, of course. But that's how I think you get to mass adoption, is that the blockchain as an infrastructure layer completely disappears, and so the users get the benefit of using it without necessarily knowing that they're using it.
So using blockchain without knowing you're using blockchain, eliminating seed phrases, eliminating friction, and using an email address. I think that'd be a lot easier for everyone else.
Yeah, and so it's a little bit like, okay, if you're a degen and you really believe in being a degen and DeFi, which I firmly believe in, then you look at this and say, like, this is heresy, right? Because this is not the way to be, like, my keys, you know, if I don't have my keys, then I own my money. But like, I think really getting to mass adoption is really going beyond that, and giving people the tools to take the benefit of the infrastructure without necessarily having to know that you're using the infrastructure. Nobody knows they're using an Oracle database when they're doing something, so why should they know about the blockchain?
Yeah, that's completely fair. Benny, same question to you. What's the catalyst?
So I think if we look at something like ChatGPT, that app has been the fastest growing app in history. In a span of time that is incomprehensible to most people, what it would mean for anyone else to reach 100 million users. It's now at something like 400 million users. I believe many of the things that we're discussing about, whether it's privacy, governance, abstraction that you really embed to the blockchains, or whether it's scalability, speed, things that we've prepared and are going to release, those things I think will be taken to their natural conclusion mostly with AI. Because people have money, they have opportunities, they've had this before blockchain, and it's in the AI space that for the first time you cannot do without. So I believe that we'll have many more AI tools that will literally eat software, will eat all our other tools, and it is within that stack that blockchain indeed will disappear, because you'll use it, it will just work, you'll have verification, and that's the thing that you'll love. You'll just get the value that you want out of it.
And Chris, this whole thing is really set up. What's the catalyst?
Yeah, I mean, I've just got a very hard line on this. I think that we really should be using blockchain for voting. I think we get to take control of decision making, and we should be having a conversation. Is Dominion's voting system legitimate? Does it work or not? Right? It should be trustless. We just don't need to trust that it works. It's trustless. That's what blockchain enables. We just need the interfaces and the abilities to be able to participate in decision making more holistically than we do today.
Amazing. Well, everybody, we are out of time. Make sure you give a big round of applause for Chris, Benny, Mark. My name's AJ Rates Crypto. Have a safe rest of your day. Get rich or get wrecked. Peace out.
Thank you, guys.
treasury now open for governance, RareEvo has 2 high-impact proposals that will amplify the Cardano community. Unveiling the first unified global events marketing strategy for Cardano and Cardano Summit 2025, including regional tech events. Event strategy is paramount to every Layer 1, and we're scaling that success with outreach that puts Cardano at the forefront. Support growth that's proven. Submit your yes vote now. Introducing RarePack. Formalizing after RareEvo, RarePack is intended to be a political action committee powered by the RareEvo community. RarePack will exist to give blockchain builders and believers a voice, locally in your home state and all the way to Washington, D.C., fighting for fair, pro-innovation crypto policy. To learn more about RarePack, visit rarepack.io and sign up today to stay connected. Together, we're building a crypto-friendly America. The official RareEvo 2025 closeout party is Saturday night at Zouk Nightclub at Resorts World. Featuring Millennium live on stage. Doors open at 10:30 p.m. All RareEvo attendees get in free with exclusive line access. Get there early to lock in your spot. And remember, proper attire is required. This is how we close out RareEvo 2025. Zouk, Millennium, for next year, right now. RareEvo 2026 is already in the works, and it's going to be even bigger. More chains, more builders, more connections. Tickets are live. Go to rareevo.io/2026 to grab your early access pricing before it's gone. Don't wait.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time this afternoon. I'm Rick Tapia. I've been in the crypto space for a little over a decade. Today, I run Restored Law, a law practice that helps founders and builders stay legally compliant in the Web3 space as they scale their business. Most of my clients are building on the cutting edges of DeFi, infrastructure, RWAs, and the many other areas that blockchain technology is disrupting. I also am the Indiana chapter president for Staying with Crypto, so I do some work on the policy side as well, helping bridge the gap between builders and legislators. Starting this afternoon, I'd like to have the rest of our panelists introduce themselves, and then we can go from there.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Veronica Hash, and I run the partnerships for the U.S. policy team at Coinbase. I've been with the partnerships team, the policy team, for only 3 months. It's been a wild ride, but I've been with Coinbase almost 6 years. Previous to this role, I was running all of our belonging work, so our DEI initiatives. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Veronica. And thank you, Rick, for moderating. I've really been looking forward to this. So hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Hansen, and I am the Michigan president for Stand With Crypto. I run our state chapter there. And my background is in software engineering and decentralized systems. And now I'm at the intersection of tech and community and policy. And political advocacy is something that I'm really focused on. And really that involves bringing the voices of all of you and the builders and the community into that conversation where policy decisions are made.
Hi everyone, my name is Tamara Schultz. I am the community coordinator at Stand With Crypto. Stand with Crypto is a grassroots crypto movement in the US. We represent the 52 million crypto owners across the states, and we are pushing for clear pro-crypto policy.
Great. To start, and this is a general question for each of you, I'd love to hear from each of you, what does advocacy mean in the crypto context from where you sit? Whether it's shaping policy, organizing at the grassroots level, or engaging with lawmakers and regulators?
When I think about advocacy, I think about speaking for those who aren't in the room. And that definitely comes with my background of, working with diversity, equity, and inclusion for sure. I think that if you have the opportunity to be in a space where there are influential people, you absolutely want to come with the advocacy lens or cap on, because there are people who aren't there and you get a chance to speak for them. So that's what I think about advocacy.
Great.
Yeah, that is super important. Those are great points, Veronica. So political advocacy for me is about a few different things that all work together in a complementary way. It's about mobilizing community, facilitating connections between the community and policymakers, and then also educating lawmakers. So before Stand With Crypto, the people using crypto and the builders that are creating the tech were in completely separate rooms from the people making the laws and creating the policy and deciding the future of this entire industry, which doesn't make any sense. I think it's safe to say that in most instances, when lawmakers are legislating, they know quite a bit about the topics they're legislating, maybe more than the general public, but with crypto, that is not the case. So it is so important not just to educate lawmakers, but to bring the voices of the community into those rooms, and making sure that lawmakers are hearing the real stories from people who are using crypto, from the families that are sending remittances overseas, from the builders that are creating real solutions for their communities. So really, it's about humanizing crypto and making sure that legislators are understanding the value that crypto brings to our communities and how valuable it is to our economy, right? So advocacy for me is about connecting the legislators and the communities, making sure they're hearing from us, and then also educating the legislators themselves and helping them understand why crypto is so important and moving them beyond this notion that crypto is only speculative or crypto is about crime, right? The uneducated lawmakers, that's what they associate it with. So we really need to dispel those stereotypes and educate them to help them understand this is the future of money, and America does not want to be left behind in these decisions.
That's amazing, Elizabeth. For me, advocacy, I think it's turning that energy and passion into action. It's not just about being pro-crypto, it's about educating people about what's at stake and also empowering them to act. So contacting their lawmaker, sending an email to their lawmaker, attending a town hall, or even just going to a crypto event in their community. There's this myth that crypto is in a vacuum, and that's just not the reality. There's policies being written right now at the state and federal level that directly impacts the innovation in all the companies that you see in this room. So we need to be, as advocates, we need to make sure that the voices of the builders here, of the community builders, of investors, of people utilizing this new tech, that they're being heard and that they're taken seriously. If we're not part of the conversation, these decisions in DC, they'll be made for us and not with us.
Really appreciate all three of your answers. Thank you so much. Moving the discussion along a little bit, Veronica, I'll start with you on this question. So from your institutional point of view, what do you really see as the biggest regulatory or legislative threats, or really rather opportunities facing the crypto space today, especially here in the US?
Yeah, well, we are, for better or worse, how you may feel about this administration, it's been really good for crypto. And it's made a huge impact on institutions like Coinbase, who previously we've been in the doghouse, underneath the doghouse, right? And it's really rewarding for us to now be in the room, be invited into spaces, ask for input, and really seen by these legislators as, you know, the mature player in the space. And that is not without decades of work from my colleagues and decades of work from lobbyists and other grassroots advocacy folks that have made a huge impact. We are really so excited that we have passed the Genius Act into law. So stablecoins, yes, woo, I hear some people out there, that's right, come on. Yay for stablecoins, we're excited about that. We think that is going to unlock a lot of people coming into the economy and really coming into crypto space. But we still have a hurdle to pass with clarity. We want to make sure that that gets passed in the Senate. So, you know, you're going to hear from us. Definitely reach out to your senators and let them know that we want that Clarity Act passed, because the next issue is really around how is this going to be properly regulated? Where is it going to sit as far as the jurisdictions are concerned? And ultimately, what's going to happen to DeFi, right? We don't want to lose our decentralized spirit because we have to become so regulated. So I think that's really the challenge that's gonna happen. And then the other challenge I would say, especially around stablecoins, is there is gonna be a proliferation of players in the space, and there's going to be more competition, which is good. But there's also gonna be people that come out of the woodworks that maybe aren't as, I don't know what the right word is, but awesome. Let's just call it that. And so we really need to do our work as, you know, folks in this space, being trustworthy, making sure we're pointing people in the right directions, because again, we want the end game to be people coming into the crypto economy, coming into the space. And so I think those are really the challenges that we're going to face now, and the opportunities as well.
Yeah, really, really great points. And I think, you know, talking about, you know, obviously a lot of the bills that we're seeing, you know, pass through legislation at the federal level is great. But Elizabeth, I'm going to turn to you to talk a little bit about what's going on at the state level. So you know, you are organizing at the state level. Why is state advocacy so important, especially in a space that seems so global or federal by nature here in the US? And what are you seeing on the ground to help support this notion?
This is a great question, and I get this a lot. You know, there's the question of, do state laws add value, or are they merely redundant to federal legislation? I think this is a pretty typical question, right? And so the answer is a couple things. One, federal laws are not intended to address everything, right? So the state laws can come in and fill the gaps, the regulatory gaps, where federal legislation, you know, doesn't pertain to. So state laws are designed to address things like tax laws, licensing, energy requirements, things like this. So, you know, not only is it practical, you know, and necessary, but also there's a special benefit to there being state level laws, and that is because states can tailor their legislation for the unique needs of their state and their economy and their innovation ecosystem, and really work to elevate and empower the citizens of their state.
Right, yeah, really great answer there. Tamara, I want to, you know, kind of stay in the lines of kind of community advocacy, ask this question to you. You're seeing things from the ground up with staying with crypto. What's motivating everyday people to get involved in crypto advocacy right now? And why should they care?
I think people are starting to realize that crypto advocacy isn't this abstract thing in DC where people are just debating and writing laws. There's a personal connection to it, to people now. It's whether they have access to their wallets, or if their wallets get drained, or if they don't have access to this new Web3 tech that they rely on now, or whether if financial innovation stays within the US or it goes offshore. So I think people are starting to wake up and starting to realize that there's policy that's being written right now that directly affects the tech that they're using, and this urgency is turning curiosity into action. I'm seeing a lot of folks, older folks, going to crypto events, wanting to learn how to get a wallet, how to mint NFTs. I'm seeing college students going to town halls, asking questions about crypto in their own state. I'm seeing developers and coders being leaders in rallies. So it's exciting, it's powerful, and it's just the beginning.
I think you're absolutely right. It is just the beginning. We're just getting started. And so one thing I want to kind of discuss with kind of each of you is, there's a perception that crypto policy is either too complex or too hostile, or there's not enough stakeholders having their voice heard, whether it's at the state level or at the federal level. But this year, obviously, we have seen that momentum with the Genius Act, as you were discussing, obviously the Clarity Act as well as a big one that people are discussing. And it did, the Genius Act did pass with bipartisan support, and courts are increasingly, demanding clarity and due process. But what does effective collaboration, really look like across all of these different sectors? Because it really is taking a collaborative effort to move the ball forward, and it's going to be the case in order to continue to do so. And Veronica, I'll start with you, and we'll go down the line.
Well, collaboration is really key. I think that if you're going to get anything done, you have to do it together. And as I look out at this audience, I see some folks who have come to DC with Stand With Crypto and have been absolutely critical to us getting to the place where we are, especially on the Democratic side of the House, because Democrats really want to understand practically how this is going to work. They want to know that it is a diverse space, and they want to see that the consumers and their constituents are going to have access, opportunity, and they're going to be safe. So when I think about the founders that we've brought in with Stand With Crypto, that's like hands down, mic drop, the smartest thing we ever did. And I really appreciate everybody who's come to DC and has made those impacts for us. Yes, clap it up, give yourselves a round of applause. There you go. I think also too on the collaborative side with what I do with the partnerships, it really is about who is better than you. And how can you leverage the relationships? DC is completely built on relationships. You know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, and that's how you get things done in that town. But when you think about yourself as a project, when you think about who you're going to partner with, you want to be with people that have the same sort of passion, have the same work ethic, have the same ability to hustle, grind, and move the ball forward. And if you partner yourself with the wrong company or the wrong entity, that's going to affect your integrity and it's going to affect your bottom line ultimately. So some partnerships that I'm really proud of that we've been able to start over the last few months have really been partnerships that focus on after the legislation is passed, now what? So partnerships with the Chamber of Commerce. This is huge. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is the largest trade association, thank you very much. The largest trade association here in the US as well as globally. And so thinking ahead, how do we want to increase, again, adoption awareness? We want to work with entities like the Chamber that has all of these small businesses. We want to educate these small businesses, leveraging the Chamber's platform and leveraging their data to say, hey, stablecoins, USDC, this is something you can actually use for your business. Cheaper, faster payments, global settling almost instantly. These are things that are going to move the needle for these small business owners. If I'm going to approach a small business and say, hey, I want you to do this, we better make sure it makes a difference for them. And so partnerships, anybody who's a founder, owns a project, you know how important it is to partner with the right people. And so I would say at the end of the day, make sure you're partnering up with those that are going to help you move your goals forward. And so I'm excited about Stand With Crypto as the best partners that we've had.
Well, we're excited to have you on our side. Absolutely. It's been very powerful. So I would say that it's important to have good coalition building and education, right? So coalition building, even in the sense of being inclusive within the community. I remember, my first DevCon back in, maybe it was 2017, it was mostly developers. And eventually we realized if we want to use blockchain tech to solve the world's problems, we have to be more inclusive and so to create that level of accessibility in the community and realizing we're going to be better for it, to be able to have everybody participating. And really, when we are innovating, we want a diversity of input. That's how we come up with solutions that serve everyone. So I think inclusivity is super important. And then I think education. I mentioned about lawmakers, but also to the community, helping crypto owners understand, as the saying goes, if we're not on the table or at the table, we're on the menu, right? So for a long time, I just cruised along as a technologist in DeFi and thinking, well, this is going to scale and we're going to be successful. But what I really took for granted was, we can have the most elegant solutions in tech, but if public perception and policymakers don't understand, then we're not going to scale and we're not going to be successful. And we've seen that with the prior administration, that choke point and that really antagonistic approach to crypto. We're seeing other countries pass us by, and we cannot overstate the impact that crypto is going to have on the world. We do not want to be left behind. We want to be part of that conversation and shaping the standard of how crypto is used. So we need to educate the masses, help them understand what's at stake, and mobilize them to engage with their lawmakers and close that gap between the community and lawmakers. And that's something that Stand With Crypto has done exceptionally well, and they've really changed the game for all of us.
I think the magic happens when collaboration from different sectors work together to write good crypto policy. I think the magic sauce for Stand With Crypto is our wonderful chapter presidents, Elizabeth being one of them, and a couple here in the audience. They all come from diverse backgrounds. They are all passionate about building crypto in their own community, and just shout out to you guys.
Shout out to you, Tamara. Tamara is our community lead, and she is incredible at leading our crew and team building and really being an inspiration and a model for all of us. It's been amazing having you lead our team.
Really great insights from the three of you. Thank you so much. As we come to a close, we're really at an inflection point, right? Laws are changing, elections are coming, and the world really is paying attention to what we're doing here in the US. As we come to a close, I'd like each of you to offer a call to action, whether that's someone who's a builder, a voter, a lawyer, or somebody that's just crypto curious. What's one thing that people can do today to help move the ball forward?
Don't give up your dreams. Don't give up on your dreams. You're building something that matters. You might be early. Actually, most of you in this room are early. Let's just admit it, okay? You are way ahead of your time, but don't give up and keep pushing yourself to create the best product that you can that's gonna solve a real problem for people. When you get out of that sort of esoteric space and into the real, that's where you're going to, I think, see yourself take off. So that would be my call to action, is to believe in yourself and surround yourself with those people that are going to believe in you and they're going to challenge you. I just want to give a shout out to my husband who's here. I would not be here without him. Those of you who have partners that have held you down and held you up, you know what I mean. So continue to keep dreaming and pushing, and really the sky's the limit. The legislation is going to be there, so you will have the safety underneath you to build. We're gonna keep pushing at that with Coinbase and with Stand With Crypto, but that would be my call to action to all of you.
Amen to that, I love that. So I would say, what can we do right now? I would say be an advocate for yourself, make sure that your voice is heard as this innovation is being built and the policies that are dictating how it can be used and how America will harness that and lead in this are being made. And you'd be surprised how receptive legislators are to your voices, to your knowledge, to your expertise. Really, they are hungry for that. It can be a little intimidating depending on your past with civic engagement, whether that's something you're experienced in. Stand With Crypto makes it really easy. Not only are they advocating for us on Capitol Hill, but they're giving you tools to advocate for yourself. If you go to their website, it's One, it's super fun because they grade all federal legislators like A through D with colors. You don't want to be in the red. So that's really fun to see. And it's a way for them to hold legislators accountable. But also there's tools on there for civic engagement. You can sign up, click the join button, give your contact info. They'll let you know when legislation is happening that impacts you, that impacts how you can use crypto. And it's really easy to be able to click that button and send emails to your members of Congress. So be engaged, let your voices be known. And then at the state level, talk to your state legislators. They're eager to hear from you. So be engaged and help really be part of what is being shaped right now. What happens in the next couple of years will shape this tech in America for decades to come. So we cannot miss this window.
My call to action is simple, just show up. If you're a coder, if you're, you just got your first token now, if you still feel like a newbie in the space, you have a voice. And right now is the time to use it. Policy is being written right now that directly affects the innovation that you're seeing here. And staying silent is a vote to status quo. So go to standwithcrypto.org, find your rep, email them. It takes 5 minutes. Just speaking up together, we're not only influencing crypto policy, but we're helping build it.
Great. One thing that I'll add, and really great points by each of you, and thank you guys so much for the great, insightful, thoughtful discussion this afternoon, is also, if you are somebody that's just learning about crypto for the first time, or you're somebody that is seasoned, don't underestimate your own voice wherever you live. There's an opportunity there, whether it is talking with a local business owner who says, hey, I have family back home in a different country and I'm looking at ways to, send remittances and send money back home. Or it's, a young person who's like, hey, I'm learning about coding and developing. What are some areas that maybe I should look at? You have an opportunity in front of you to really kind of shape what the future of crypto looks like here in the US. And I would just say also, if you are a builder, don't underestimate the legal side. We talked a lot about, the policy side of things, but there are still some steps that you need to take to make sure that you're protecting yourself, your business, and the participants in your own ecosystems that you're building. So I would encourage anybody, if you are building, talk to somebody who can help you build on the legal side as well. But without further ado, that wraps up our panel. And thank you so much, my fellow panelists, and thank you everybody so much.
Thank you, Rick.
Cardano D-Reps. With the Treasury now open for governance, RareEvo has 2 high-impact proposals that will amplify the Cardano community. Unveiling the first unified global events marketing strategy for Cardano and Cardano Summit 2025, including regional tech events. Event strategy is paramount to every Layer 1, and we're scaling that success with outreach that puts Cardano at the forefront. Support growth that's proven. Submit your yes vote now. Introducing RarePac. Formalizing after RareEvo, RarePac is intended to be a political action committee powered by the RareEvo community. RarePac will exist to give blockchain builders and believers a voice, locally in your home state and all the way to Washington, D.C., fighting for fair, pro-innovation crypto policy. To learn more about RarePac, visit rarepac.io and sign up today to stay connected. Together, we're building a crypto-friendly America. Enjoying the event? Fire up that wallet and delegate your ADA to Rare Stake Pool. For over 3 years, Rare has been committed to providing high-quality staking services. Thank you for your support.
Hello, hello. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah? Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. We're gonna have
All right, the new panel just is going on. Guys, if you like what you see, like, subscribe, support the channel, and rewind if you want to see the previous panels they played earlier. Thank you very much for being here at RareEvo Las Vegas 2025.
Right now we're very focused on the Cardano ecosystem, and I'm also co-founder of Cardano Over Coffee, where we interview founders. So we're going to jump into it, and why don't you kick us off, Koala?
Yeah. Hey everybody, I'm Koala with Alchemix. I'm the COO. We are, in short, a self-repaying loans protocol, so we're aiming to be the safest way in crypto to get a bit of leverage and borrow against your crypto.
Hi everyone, my name is Sam Kazmian. I'm the founder of Frax, and Frax is issuing the first Genius-compliant stablecoin at Frax USD. And so a lot of you guys probably have heard the Genius bill that passed about 2.5 weeks ago legalizes stablecoins for banks, payments, and everything, and we're issuing the first one.
Hi everybody, I am Jonathan Thomas, and I am the founder of Blueberry, and we tokenize different yield strategies as well as try and make DeFi and all of finance a little bit easier for the average user.
Hi everybody, I'm Korn, I'm from Yearn. I do all of the BD and partnership integrations for us. I've been working for Yearn for about 4 years now, and we are a DeFi yield farming project. So users deposit their funds into a Yearn vault. All of those funds go into a bunch of different lending markets, and we get supply side yield, and then we send it all back to the users. Today we have about $650 million in Yearn vaults.
All right. So our first questions today actually are going to go to the audience. We want to get to know you better. So my first question for you, raise your hand if you have owned a meme coin.
There we go.
That's a memes. All right.
Me too.
Oh wait, we should have all raised our hands. What about who has bought an NFT before? Okay, we still got some. What about DeFi? Who here is using DeFi? Wow, that's more than NFTs.
That's surprising, actually.
That is surprising. Well, I think you guys are at the right panel. And to get things started, I'm going to ask some of our panelists to talk a little bit about their protocol and just give us an overview of, what I know you started, Corn, going into Yearn, which is great. So I don't know if any of you three want to maybe talk a little bit about your protocol and, for the layman out there.
Sure, yeah. So Frax has actually been around for a while in the DeFi space, but our flagship product is actually very new. It's called Frax USD, which is a fully compliant and soon to be federally licensed stablecoin pegged to the US dollar. And I think the most important law that's probably been passed in the last few years with anything related to crypto is the Genius Act. And so a lot of people here in the audience probably know that the Genius Act actually makes certain type of stablecoin legally acceptable as payments and federally audited. And so we're issuing the first one that's completely Genius compatible. So it is called Frax USD. And fun fact, actually was in DC back in March, giving feedback and helping write one of the drafts. In fact, with some of the DC-based Stand With Crypto people and other foundations like Blockchain Association and everything. So we had a presence in kind of crafting this bill. And I think the most important thing about it is that everyone on the stage here that has like DeFi protocols and everything needs a safe digital dollar that's actually compliant, and the actual government that issues the US dollar unit, right? The USA actually says this thing is a dollar. This thing actually can be accepted for payments. This thing can actually be accepted in banks. And the more of those stablecoins that the foundational DeFi platforms are built on top of, I think that's when everyone wins, because you can build riskier but better things on top without the foundation being shaky.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, and I think related to that, like we saw, almost everyone here has bought a meme coin. Not so many people here have used DeFi. We need to make crypto easy to use. That's why people buy meme coins. They're very easy. And so adding safety through compliance, and then with Alchemix, there are a lot of ways to borrow against your crypto in DeFi and in crypto in general. A lot of them are very dangerous. You can very easily get liquidated, end up paying insane interest rates, all of that. So with Alchemix, we've really tried to create a very friendly leverage experience where you cannot get liquidated. You pay us a % of your yield rather than an interest rate. So we're never going to charge you more than you make. And that's really what we're trying to do with Alchemix, is create a product that's actually simple to use, just like meme coins are very simple to do. Because ultimately, DeFi is actually beneficial for people to use. Meme coins, you're generally going to lose money. Maybe you find a community, that's good, I guess. But if you make the beneficial things easy to use, then you can actually start to create some good in the world through crypto rather than just rampant speculation. So.
Yeah, and then as Koala just mentioned, how you're using your loan to be able to yield farm.
Raise your mic.
Okay. As Koala was mentioning, where it's like you're able to yield farm with your loan that you take out. So for us at Blueberry, it's being able to create more sophisticated yield strategies that might be a pretty complex thing where a market maker or a high frequency trading firm is going to be putting on, and being able to have one-click access for the average user to be able to earn the same yields as that, and then being able to utilize that in more complex strategies, or being able to just be passive with your investment and be able to understand how much money did I put in, how much money am I getting out of it, and then also what are the risks associated with it. So trying to be able to bring a level of transparency into it, as well as just trying to make it a little bit more user-friendly is the real goal for Blueberry. Building out the DeFi terminal, as we like to call it. So in TradFi right now, you have a Bloomberg terminal that a lot of financiers are going to be using, and we're trying to build something that's a little bit more focused on the everyday user first.
Awesome. Well, hopefully that gives you guys a good primer on who we're talking to. So let's talk about something that maybe people have a tough time understanding about your protocol, or what's a misconception that you often find in your communities. Who wants to take it first? Go ahead, Korn.
So Yearn has always had this problem where what we do is very safe. And our APYs, our yields, right now around like stables are around 10%, which is still a lot higher than you get in traditional finance, but in crypto, people are looking for a number way higher than that. And we've always been misunderstood for that reason, and we've always stuck to our guns and just stayed executing really safe strategies. We always also had this issue trying to get people to come over from the traditional world. You know, they might think crypto is really risk on, and it was for a period of time, but it's getting safer. And I think we kind of had this, we were trying to reach an audience of people who were risk on, but they were inside traditional finance and not coming into crypto, but we had a really safe product. But, you know, through the past 5 years, and Yearn started 5 years ago, we were one of the first DeFi projects out there. We're slowly starting to see this like new audience of people coming in who are moderate. They're moderately risk tolerant. They want to get that 10% yield compared to the 4% they're getting at their bank, but they're not looking for like the 1000x. And for the past 3 years, like that was the crypto audience, that person looking to make millions. So I think it's going to still be a long road for Yearn, getting back to like billions of dollars of TVL, but we're going to stick to our traditions and what we're most comfortable with.
Yeah, I think one, not misconception, but things that people probably have a question about, not just about Frax, but also the recent stablecoin legislation and things, is how does this make a difference, right? Like there's like a new law about stablecoins. How does it actually work? You know, you already probably use USDC. Maybe some people use USDT. Frax USD, ours is already on many chains. People use it. What's the difference, right? And so I think the important thing is actually to highlight this is actually a huge thing, even though you can't really see it. The Genius Act actually essentially makes certain types of stablecoins, the ones that custody almost essentially risk-free assets like treasury bills and money market fund securities, in qualified custodians, which are entities like BlackRock, which we work with, Fidelity, WisdomTree, that are SEC registered entities. If you issue a stablecoin that has these assets backed in a qualified custodian and the federal government audits these assets, just like they do a bank. They go to the bank regulators, go and check that the bank actually has what they say they do. Then you get a Genius payment stablecoin license, right? And then that actually makes your stablecoin legally acceptable to be used as bank settlement media or in payments and things like that. And so we're able to actually start talking to new places and banks and everyone that's actually interested to participate in DeFi and stablecoins with using these new payment stablecoins that are Genius compliant. And that is a huge difference. So people might not be able to see it because they're not having those conversations. But as Korn was saying, there needs to be a new audience, right? Whether from the user level or from the institutional level. And this is actually a huge shift that happened 2.5 weeks ago. And a lot of these things will be coming basically in early next year.
I have a question, because I know you worked on the Genius Act so much. Can they be yield bearing?
So the stablecoin itself cannot be yield bearing. It has to be a legal digital dollar. And so for the reason for that is that there has to be a base unit that is counted as a Genius stablecoin for the definition. I actually helped write part of that definition specifically. So like this part is actually super important, because if there was yield-bearing stablecoins that were like legal tender and non-yield-bearing stablecoins, then you don't know which ones you can like lend in Aave, and then if you need a base unit that's $1, so that debt can be denominated in like regulated stablecoins, and you can know in many places that this is just $1. Now the other important thing is the yield clause, and I think that's actually a common misconception too, which is you can pay rewards for holding these things in specific areas. So the people actually before us was like Coinbase and Stand With Crypto. Coinbase itself has a USDC earn program, right? If some of you guys might have used it, you hold USDC on Coinbase, they give you 4.1% yield. That is because it is a partnership and not an issuer paid interest rate. And so Frax can, through a fintech app or even a fintech app that we build, but that is not just you holding Frax USD from the issuer, can pay rewards and comply with the Genius Act, but there's no legal right to interest or rewards by holding a Genius compliant stablecoin.
Awesome. I think that's a great segue to the next part, which is what role should regulation play in DeFi, right? You're talking about stablecoins, which are obviously a critical part of the DeFi ecosystem, but DeFi is also bigger than stablecoins. So,
yeah, I'll start on that one, and obviously Sam will have a lot to add to that one too. But in my opinion, crypto gives us this amazing opportunity to codify financial rules into a blockchain like Ethereum, any blockchain really. And so when you're designing a crypto project, a protocol, a product, whatever you're doing, step one is like, whatever you want to do, can you just entirely enshrine it into Ethereum? And then that way the rules are there. You don't need legal regulations there because all the rules are on the blockchain. From there, a lot of projects can't be entirely just enshrined on Ethereum, and you need to have something like a DAO that governs it. You need to have a money manager who's managing, like, making decisions around these protocols. That's where I think you need regulation, because otherwise you end up with people with a lot of power over other people's money with no regulation. So regulation is good when you're regulating someone who's controlling someone else's money. Regulation is bad when you're trying to regulate code that already does the regulation just by nature of being immutable code on the blockchain.
Does anyone want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. And the other big thing too about regulation is it really gives like the lay of the lands, being able to figure out now these are the guardrails that you as a developer are able to think about, and then being able to build products that are either 100% compliant or being able to get a little bit creative with the way that you're doing it. And then it just allows you to know what is the right way to move forward, as well as what way is a lot of the traditional institutional money comfortable playing with. So then you're able to know just a little bit more of direction on how to build out a product, as well as you being able to start getting a little bit more creative with how everything is being structured, because you're able to think about it as building with Legos, and everything that we're doing is having a money Lego and being able to see how does it fit in with another piece, and just being able to continuously build on top of that.
I'm actually a pretty light touch regulation person myself, to be honest, even though I'm probably the one up here that's been to DC the most. Like for real, like I think the way that I would think about it is there's very few things that actually require regulation, and like one of those things is what is legally a dollar if you're going to use it on the blockchain, because is it a dollar that's tokenized like this and that? But outside of that, and maybe what is a security in terms of like what actually is the actual definition that applies to digital assets? And to be honest, my opinion is that's it. That's enough. I'm not a pro more regulation person. I'm pretty libertarian minded, but it requires some definitions for everything else to work underneath it. Otherwise, it's absolute chaos if you don't know what a real legal stablecoin is, what a real dollar is, which one is built on top of what, and these kind of things. But there's not that many things you need to know, to be honest, in my opinion.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I like the enshrining, from the L1. I think that's a nice way to think about it, and definitely agree with a lot of your points, Sam. But let's talk a little bit about user adoption challenges. Who's facing one today, and how are you solving it? What's the bottleneck? Corin, you want to start?
Yeah, I can take this one. We are tasked with doing due diligence on all of these different sources of yield, and for a long time when we first started doing this, there was no standardization of tokenization. There was no vault standard, and we did end up coming up with that. It's called the 4626 vault standard, and that has led us to having less development, being quicker to market, and just being able to interact more safely with all these different sources of yield. But we have users requesting us to work with like non-4626 compliant projects, or projects that are just doing risky things. And I think one of the misconceptions about Yearn is when we decline to make a strategy or like tap into a source of yield, it's not because we're like short on resources, or it's because we don't get along with that project. It's because we have a risk framework that has to, like all these different prerequisites have to be met. It has to be liquid all the time. It has to be able to take big deposits with little slippage. And there's a reason why we're not building a strategy for you. It has nothing to do with anything else other than it being not safe. And that has been kind of a hurdle for us for the past like few years, because we're stuck only working with like the big projects out there, like the big lending markets out there, like Aave, Compound, Fraxlend, Morpho. We have sources of yield for all of those, but the newer ones, the ones that are on the bleeding edge, the ones that are giving away their like points, tokens, and stuff like that, we're not able to use those. And we have lost out on a lot of deposits because of that, but we're still around, and the lights are still on, and the user funds are still safe. So that's what's most important to us.
Yeah, and I guess similar to what you said before, Alchemix also, like Yearn, focuses on pretty safe yield strategies, pretty good yield. And I think up until recently, just to like use crypto and use DeFi in the first place, you had to do a lot of really weird stuff and figure out take all these steps, 20 steps to like get your money into Coinbase, then onto the blockchain, write down your private keys, do all of this stuff. And once you do that, you're like, wait, I did all of that just to earn 10% yield. Whereas, you're like, I want my 100x. I want this was hard. I want something for it. Now it's a lot easier to use crypto. So we're finding that people are more willing to come on chain for those safer use cases, just because before it was just whoever was on chain was by nature kind of degenerate because they were the only ones who figured out how to get there in the first place. Now a lot more people are figuring out how to get on chain, so there are just a lot more people out there who are just willing to be on chain and feel safe in doing so, and will take those better yields than their bank, but they're not chasing these crazy yields. And so it's been hard for us to attract those safer users in the past as a safer protocol, but we're finding that's resonating with a lot more people now.
Got it. So, both of you talked a little about tokens, and to kind of shift a little bit, I want to talk about L2s, maybe alternative chains. How important are these to your growth, and how do you maybe approach that, or how do you prioritize them, or do you prioritize them at all?
Yeah, so I think this is actually pretty relevant to stablecoins, because there's probably the one primitive that every new network needs is a dollar, and then things can be built around it, and everything like lending markets, like yield and things like that. And so my opinion has always been that the way that people come and go between all these different chains, which are growing more and more every week, there's like another L1 or L2 that's launched, is a stablecoin that's trustable and a mint and burn between all the chains by the issuer. So if you guys are familiar with Circle, they have this thing called CCTP. Frax USD has the Frax Mesh. It's our connection and messaging system between everything, and you can go one-to-one between Solana, L2s, and everything in seconds. I think that's actually been a very powerful thing for us as a stablecoin issuer, as a strategy, because once you're natively on a certain chain and someone can take their money in dollars and go one-to-one in seconds to Solana, go to Abstract Chain, for example, or Arbitrum or Ethereum, you're actually providing a value for someone that actually needs it, which is take value between different ledgers. And if you think about it, that actually kind of comes with the banking system. If you wire money from one bank to another, the other bank doesn't say, this is 0.9987 on the dollar because that bank is risky, right? They all just take it as one-to-one, right? And so the way that I think of all these chains is they're all different ledgers, essentially decentralized ones, and there needs to be a way to actually take dollars and wire them, so to speak, between each other. And so our strategy at Frax has been to connect as many of these chains in native ways with our messaging system as possible. And yesterday we actually hit the all-time high of cross-chain messaging that we've ever validated at Frax. So
nice. Love to see it, hitting milestones. Does anyone else want to talk about this?
Yeah, Yearn always focused on the Ethereum ecosystem, and for a period of time, people were paying hundreds of dollars in gas costs to go and do simple movements. And it was actually costing us quite a bit too, because whenever we launch a vault or whenever we do a harvest, that is a gas fee that we have to pay. So being on qualified layer 2s that have good liquidity where we can make viable strategies is really important to us, and it's something we're always looking for. We just started working with one called Katana, and it is a native yield chain. What that means is when you bridge over, all of the funds that are held up in that bridge are yield bearing. They're earning yield, and all that yield gets ported onto the layer 2 to the areas of that are going to create the most network effects for the chain. So the whole idea of this is to have this system that is constantly generating yield to incrementally grow the chain and the chain's liquidity over time. So I thought that was pretty novel, and it's got a bunch of different implementations of Yearn vaults, and that's the kind of innovation we're looking for with layer 2s.
Awesome. So we got one question left. I want to know, out of all the use cases the DeFi has not nailed down perfectly, which one is your company or protocol best positioned to accomplish?
I can start quick. I've touched on it already, but I think a lot of DeFi focuses on very degenerate use cases and requiring a lot of active management and monitoring. And borrowing against your assets is a tool that's been available to not everyone for a very long time. And I think we've managed to find a way to let people borrow against their assets, but also be able to sleep at night when doing that.
So I think for us, it's what we can bring to DeFi, and so it's legal payments. And so like we work with Stripe and Bridge, and Stripe is a huge payment processor, and so Frax USD can be integrated in the Stripe API and the Bridge system. And so one of the main things is, can we bring people's digital dollars that they use in DeFi to actually just at checkout on Shopify websites or like bank deposits and things like that. And imagine you can just seamlessly do that. You can put it in Yearn or Alchemix or anywhere, and then you can take it out and then just check out at Shopify or your favorite website. And so that's actually, I think, the area that Frax is doing with Frax USD that I think is the most impactful.
Yeah, and I would say for Blueberry, it's focusing on more of the complex, difficult strategies that exist, and then being able to present it to the user in a very easy to digest and be able to understand what they're actually earning, and then just having it as user friendly as possible and as close to a one-click experience that we can really drive home to everybody. That's the big thing for us.
The thing I think we're struggling to do today in DeFi is actually something that we started out by doing very well. We were decentralized and we were immutable. And I think these days, there are a lot of DeFi projects out there who have full control over user funds and are doing whatever they want to do with them. And that could be a problem in the future. And our strategy for that, dealing with that right now, is to wait it out and wait for them to mess up. Because we know that as long as we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to be there when those users need a safe place to be. So,
I love that. Yeah, being patient, try to survive, keep thriving. I love it.
Don't give in to what the market and what the users want you to do when you know it's not right.
I love it. Well, those are all the questions that we have. So let's give our awesome DeFi panelists a quick round of applause. Thank you all for joining us. It's been a pleasure. This is great. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Introducing RarePack. Formalizing after RareEvo, RarePack is intended to be a political action committee powered by the RareEvo community. RarePack will exist to give blockchain builders and believers a voice, locally in your home state and all the way to Washington, D.C., fighting for fair, pro-innovation crypto policy. To learn more about RarePack, visit rarepack.io and sign up today to stay connected. Together, We're building a crypto-friendly America. The official RareEvo 2025 closeout party is Saturday night at Zouk Nightclub at Resorts World. Featuring Millennium live on stage. Doors open at 10:30 p.m. All RareEvo attendees get in free with exclusive line access. Get there early to lock in your spot. And remember, proper attire is required. This is how we close out RareEvo 2025. Zouk, Millennium, and one unforgettable send-off. Enjoying RareEvo? Then lock in your spot for next year right now. RareEvo 2026 is already in the works, and it's going to be even bigger. More chains, more builders, more connections. Tickets are live. Go to rareevo.io/2026 to grab your early access pricing before it's gone. Don't wait. Be first. Be part of what's next. We'll see you at RareEvo 2026. Cardano D-Reps. With the Treasury now open for governance, RareEvo has 2 high-impact proposals that will amplify the Cardano community. Unveiling the first unified global events marketing strategy for Cardano and Cardano Summit 2025, including regional tech events. Event strategy is paramount to every Layer 1, and we're scaling that success with outreach that puts Cardano at the forefront. Support growth that's proven. Submit your yes vote now. Enjoying the event? Fire up that wallet and delegate your ADA to Rare Stake Pool. For over 3 years, Rare has been committed to providing high-quality staking services. Thank you for your support.
Alrighty, well, hello everyone. My name is Debbie Soon. I am an author. Was just over there at the Stuff.io booth, signing my book, Digital Mavericks. I also lead up marketing at Pre, which is a wallet infrastructure company, but today is really not all about me. It's also, my dog is called Guinness. But today's not about me, it's about these wonderful gentlemen. We are here to talk about the intersection of blockchain and AI, which are obviously topics that keep coming up in the industry and in the news. So before we begin, I'm just going to hand it over to these guys to give a short intro about themselves.
I'm Luke Maltz. I'm a VP of Business Operations at Brave, yeah.
Hi, my name is Chris Johnson. I work at Virtuals Protocol. We're a tokenized agent launching platform, and I guess my official title is Swiss Army Knife.
Hi, I'm Navin. I run IQAI. We built the platform for launching tokenized agents for DeFi, for trading, lending, borrowing, and everything on chain.
And hi everybody, Mark Osis. I'm here with Deloitte's Office of the CTO. I do emerging tech research across AI, blockchain, and several other technologies.
Yeah, so I always love this because I think that blockchain and AI, sometimes they are almost pitted against each other. There is this narrative that like, oh, all of the crypto developers are leaving to go build an AI, or all the crypto founders are going to leave and build an AI because that's the hottest topic. And I think all 4 of you here have a unique point of view in terms of that they don't have to be mutually exclusive, and in fact, they can be very complementary. So maybe we'll start with you, Mark, because I feel like you sit in kind of a little bit more of a neutral state. You see a lot across, you see a lot of different companies. So I guess from your perspective, where do you see these 2 areas really intersecting, and what is the interest there?
Sure. These two technologies are converging and will continue to converge. Whether it be using AI coding tools to write smart contracts, whether it be having agents transact on your behalf using crypto, or whether it be using crypto incentives to power decentralized AI development, these two technologies are going to be largely intertwined. We work on a lot of technologies, whether it be quantum computing or robotics or space tech. These two are ones that I personally find very interesting, and I think the opportunity to disrupt financial systems as well as disrupt intelligence systems, they're on a parallel track of having a few key centralized players that are driving development and control, and disrupting them using blockchains is a repeated pattern that we're seeing from the inception of Bitcoin and now to some protocols that are rising up that others on this panel can speak more to.
Yeah. Luke, I'm gonna come to you because I know Brave as a privacy browser. So that's like, and maybe my understanding is limited, but like I know Brave as the go-to default like privacy browser. How does that all link to blockchain and AI?
Yeah, so Brave is the privacy browser, search engine, but we also have integrated crypto wallet that's built right into the browser. It's multi-chain and all that. We also have a browser assistant, AI assistant built directly into the browser, and so it works a lot like ChatGPT or you know, most of the other prompts out there. But now we're actually working agentic stuff in at the browser level. So like you can have something that's with you doing tasks with you in the browser, and I think, you know, as far as crypto ties in with this, there's a ton of use cases around this. You could be having agents that you're having pay for things with crypto. You can be self-funding kind of like a lot of the AI compute stuff that you're trying to do. So it's just like super early, but we're already like kind of breaking over.
How top of mind is that, like, I guess, for the entire organization as a whole? Like, is that something that you guys are really focused on? Like, it's like a side project? Like, how does it rank in terms of the things that you guys are working on?
Yeah, it's a huge focus. We have a summarized AI answers in our search engine. It hits about 40% of all the search queries that we're doing, and so like it's already been something we've been using. And the AI assistant in the browser is like a huge area of focus right now.
Cool. That's awesome. And then Chris, I guess I'll come to you next because he mentioned agents. So that's, I think, for those of you who don't know virtuals, you know, I'll let you explain in your own terms. But when I think agents and I think, you know, what they can do on the blockchain, I think my mind goes to virtuals straight away. So I feel like you're also in an incredibly well positioned to talk about where this intersection is and how you're bringing these two areas together.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a huge compliment. We like to think that we exist at the, you know, the intersection of AI, you know, and crypto. You know, I think that there's a lot of benefits to agents having like on-chain wallets. You know, right now we're seeing everyone just build like all across the board. You know, it's early days. I think we'll still see like what's like really gonna stick. You know, every couple of months though, it seems like there's like an agent team that'll come through and like the product will get like more widely adopted. I think like one of the keys in that right now is creating like user interface. It's like really, really clean and like easy. So I think like, you know, one of the most like recent examples of an agent I've seen is an agent called Momo, which is a yield farming agent. And it's just very simple where you like deposit a stable coin and it like autonomously moves like your money around for you. So I think something like that, like, you know, AI and crypto like really makes sense. But in terms of like all the other like uses, like only time will tell.
Yeah, and I think it's such an interesting juxtaposition because I think when we talk about virtuals, we talk about agents, so AI agents acting autonomously on crypto rails, and then we have Navin who does kind of like contributing to AI based on tokenized incentives, which is kind of almost like it's like the other side of the coin. So maybe you could share a little bit on for IQAI, what does that intersection look like? Because they kind of intersect in a different way.
Yeah, I think how we see it is that AI is going to be a really important technology for the blockchain. There's a lot of challenges right now in terms of using cryptocurrency for DeFi. So there's 600 million people in the world who hold crypto on exchanges, but only 7 million people use DeFi on a monthly basis. And largely that's due to complexity. I mean, if you already hold tokens, you probably want to earn yield. But the challenge really is complexity, and AI is really going to help with that. Because AI can simplify, it can be a tutor, like, and explain basically every element of doing a transaction, or even handle those transactions for you as well. And that's what we've really been focused on with ADK at IQAI, is building out the proper framework and the proper MCPs for people to build really powerful agents, connecting to DeFi, connecting to existing cryptos.
So I think we're gonna stick on this topic for a little bit because I think one of the things that's always been challenging when you're working on kind of emerging tech is that we're all still trying to figure out what the complexion of all of these things look like. Sometimes it's a little bit of limitations at an infrastructure level that, we haven't quite got to the point where we have the right infrastructure to make all of these usable. Sometimes it's more about we have the infrastructure that makes it possible, but we are not communicating effectively enough to the user, or there isn't enough awareness at a user level to really be able to put some of these into practice. So, since we were with you, maybe I think from what you're seeing, do you feel like this whole discussion around the intersection of blockchain and AI, especially as it relates to IQ/AI, do you feel like the limitations there are more info-related, user-related, narrative-related? Where do you feel like some of the challenges in adoption are today?
I think the biggest barrier for fully fusing AI and blockchain is that AIs are not really fully on chain yet. And a lot of that has to do with composability. With DeFi, you can have lending protocols that are fully on chain because you can see the outputs, you can see the assets that are held in a liquidity pool. But you don't really have AIs that are running fully on chain. You can't see the outputs of the AI. AIs are kind of like a black box at the moment, but the solution is called AI VM, AI virtual machine. So the idea is the same way you have Ethereum virtual machine, you have people building smart contracts on top of each other, like Curve building on top of ETH, Convex building on top of Curve. The same thing is going to happen with AI. So that's one of the technologies we're really excited about, and we're working with Frax. IQ/AI is working with them to build out AI VM for Fractal. So that's been really exciting. I think that's going to unlock the real kind of DeFi revolution in AI.
And then Mark, obviously, like you said, you guys work across all sorts of different technologies, including quantum computing, which I won't even pretend to even really understand what it is. So I think from your perspective, having seen across many different businesses, where do you think there's this saying where it's slowly every day and then all at once kind of thing. And so from your perspective, where are you seeing that bottleneck, and when do you think we'll get kind of all at once moment?
Yeah, it's a good question. If we could take a step back and go to Bitcoin's inception, right? Those of you in the audience know a lot about this. It was an effort to disintermediate centralized large banks who controlled the financial systems and give the rights to the users to transact peer-to-peer. And over time, this Bitcoin network, through proof of work, has become the largest computing network in the world by a factor of over 100, right? And even in today's race of big tech companies looking to acquire more GPUs to power the AI movement, still the Bitcoin network is the largest network of computing power. However, its primary function is to secure the network, right? SHA-256. What if we could repurpose some of the computing power on a network like Bitcoin, but direct it towards some sort of AI training or inference or some other infrastructure background? This is something that a project I see called BitTensor is doing. And if I could leave you guys with any one thing today, obviously Chris on this panel here today is from Virtuals. That was the first legitimate AI blockchain protocol that I came across and fell in love with it. BitTensor is another one that I would commend to you guys as using crypto incentives for AI decentralized development. And that could be, as you said, kind of that suddenly and then all at once moment.
Well, Chris, he kind of called you out there.
It's good.
But I think virtuals, definitely, like I said, I think whenever I think AI agents, and I think about people wanting to back AI agents and kind of be invested in their success, my mind immediately goes to virtuals. At the same time, I think we can all acknowledge that crypto, for as much gain as it has made over the past several years, and I think in particular this past year with the legislation changes, is still fairly niche, right? So I think awareness of virtuals is still kind of relatively limited to kind of crypto native audiences. I guess, where do you guys sit in terms of, I need to get this message in front of more people? Is it about capturing more mind and wallet share within the folks that are already in crypto? How do you think about balancing that? And is AI that wedge? I'm just curious as to where you feel again, as we talk about mass adoption, where do you feel virtuals fits into that picture?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a team,
we have a couple of different products, right? So what we're most well known for, what you're alluding to, and I think a lot of people know is by our Launchpad, right? So where people can come in and launch their tokenized agents. So there's all these teams, like Mama was the example I gave earlier. They just got listed this week on Coinbase. Some of these agent teams are like taking very large steps now, and getting out there in front of I think outside of our traditional virtuals audience. In the same sense, we're also doubling down and really, because when people come and they launch a lot of these agent ideas, they come in with these ideas they want to just do these very broad kind of companies. And agents a lot of times are they're almost like a baby when they're launched. They're like a young child, where a young child wants to be a firefighter, a rock star, and a veterinarian, right? And so as the agents develop, they become a lot more specialized. So what we're really working on now is something called Agent Commerce Protocol, which is basically these agents working in these organized clusters. So I think we're it's very early still in the process. It's great that all these people are coming together and building in AI and crypto. But I think what excites us most internally is agents coming together and working in autonomous businesses. People always talk about autonomous agents. Autonomous businesses are the next frontier.
Yeah, and then I feel ironically, it's you have the opposite side of it in that, okay, how many users does Brave have today?
We're at, I think, 94 million monthly active users.
Okay, so I think that would be probably, I think anybody working in crypto would love to have 94 million users. So you have kind of started on that other side of the spectrum, but are now kind of looking into where do you add on, and obviously I think privacy matters a lot to folks that are dealing in crypto, but then now, like you mentioned, you're floating into AI, into all of it. So how do you see, I think from your perspective, you have that distribution, obviously there's more that can be done, there's more market share to be taken, there's more market penetration to be done, but I guess how are you viewing the role that blockchain and AI plays into furthering some of those goals?
Yeah, I think there are different use cases that are still to be developed, and I think that with crypto and AI, you have two kinds of different market approaches. Where AI is weird in that you have mandates from C teams to put it everywhere and not a ton of market fit yet. And I think that on the crypto side, you just have a lot of demand from this native audience and more use cases that it can plug into that are established. And so it's kind of an interesting problem set to try to get these things to work together. But I think fundamentally it comes down to what are the use cases that are helping to provide value to the users in a way that they're going to use every day? What are the ones that matter to them, and how can we bring them forward to that user with keeping it a user first thing, having the browser is a user agent, right? And so it's kind of extending the agency of that user agent and kind of making it really useful and kind of turning out a lot of noise. And I think crypto's a natural fit with this because you got to fund these things. We have a global audience dealing with a lot of that kind of fiat issues, cross-border, whatever. We can just make stuff run natively nice and kind of extend that out beyond there.
Cool. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to talk about kind of, again, what I consider two sides of the same coin, which is speculation versus incentivization. And that, Nevin, I'll come to you first, and that, we talk about having tokenized incentives to get people to contribute to a protocol, to get people to contribute to what we want to be a desired outcome. And on the flip side of that also comes the bit about speculation. And I think a lot of the critique that this industry gets is that it's all driven by hype and speculation. None of it is long lasting. I guess, where do you kind of sit, or how do you distinguish between the two, or if there is a distinction?
I think that there definitely is a lot of speculation, obviously, in crypto, but I would say that's the same in any boom town. Any booming industry. We can go as far back as the railroads. There was a ton of speculation there. There's a lot of overbuilding there, and then there was a bust, but I think it turned out okay with railroads. So I think it will be very similar for crypto. I think that obviously there's a lot of speculation, but speculation creates demand and it creates interest. The only reason people build, oftentimes, outside of their own enjoyment, is often for the financial side, right? So if you can see that there's agent protocols that are booming, that's going to draw in investment, that's going to draw in users, that's going to draw in developers. So I think a lot of people, they just tune out anything that involves speculation, but speculation is, tomorrow's reality, basically. That's the way I would look at that.
And I suddenly, the irony suddenly dawned upon me is that we're having this conversation in Las Vegas of all places where like I think the speculation and gambling bit is what brings a lot of people here in the first place, and part of it is the enjoyment. Chris, obviously a lot of speculation around a variety of like AI agents. Like you said, not every single one of them is a legitimate business or a legitimate idea, but I guess how do you distinguish between this is just, like empty promises, like something that would go out for like 10 seconds versus something that is legitimate and actually something that worth investing in for the long term?
I mean, I think like on our platform, like we've tried to make like the teams like much more like able to be transparent and like show like, their vision, who they are, their background. I think that like, if a team is able to come in like before TGE and actually share like, okay, here are like our tokenomics, like, we're gonna lock this up for this period. Like, I think that like really helps like, the transparency, in all of it.
Right. And then Mark, I don't know if you have a view, because I feel like you probably have to take a very like maybe more conservative approach to some of these use cases, but I'm curious. Maybe you're not as conservative as I would as my initial kind of assumption.
Sure. I mean, Deloitte is a brand that's built upon a reputation of trust, right? We're a tax and audit organization largely, and so I don't know that our business as a whole is going to encourage users to speculate. However, I will say one of the benefits of blockchain and cryptocurrencies is it gives access to everybody to invest in these early stage companies that without blockchain and crypto might be reserved for only the select few to invest in and see that value appreciation. So it is a democratizing tool, but not without risk.
Yeah.
And something I'll add there too is like, I think it gives people a chance to invest in teams, like with what we see, like the landscape is like moving so quickly that like teams will come together and like launch like with a certain product or MVP, but then 3 or 6 months later have, found another pinpoint or transition to something else. So I think what's nice about it is it gives like, democratizes, the opportunity for people to invest in early stage like companies and therefore the teams behind them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Luke, maybe this is a little bit of a curveball, but I think a little bit like when we're browsing the internet, I think one of the topics that kind of comes up is a little bit about like advertising, right? And I think like obviously, Brave being a privacy first browser, how does that kind of fit in with, I think now there are a lot of monetization models and people like experimenting with like ads that are powered by your on-chain identity. So, they kind of make it seem it's a little better because, you still own your data and technically we're still monetized. It was a little bit of a roundabout, I guess, argument in some ways. So I'm curious as to whether you have a view on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've never been anti like advertising as a way to get commercial messaging out. I think it's all been about first principles, like if you respect a user and kind of can create a form of advertising that doesn't, allow everybody and companies you've never heard of to like capture your information and profile you and all that stuff, then we've actually built ad products around that, right? I think that with AI, it's interesting because it's changing the way people search, it's changing the way people consume content, it's going to change the way that the advertising business works, and it might radically change it. I think that we're in a really disruptive, transformative time, but if you're not experimenting with these things right now, then you're just gonna be behind. And so I think businesses are always gonna have a need to get what they're doing out in front of people. Maybe that's related to the context you're in, whether you're working with AI or just browsing the internet. But yeah, I mean, we've even been using like AI in our advertising models since like 2017, 2018. So it's something where now there's a lot of hype around it, but I also think it really comes down to like, is it effective? Like, is the company making a message that's worth it, or is what they're doing good? And I think honestly, kind of touching on what you guys were saying earlier, like we've been in an environment where couldn't really experiment and get market fit. Like a lot of the stuff was speculation because there wasn't a lot of other things that founders could do without, having big risks of being, slapped with a enforcement action or something like that. So it's really cool to see things warming up and like people being able to experiment more with this stuff right now.
I love that. We're starting to come up on time, so I'm going to go one by one, and we'll start with you since we're just over here. So I think, what is your big prediction, I guess, over the next 12 months? And obviously things change every single day. But if you had to make one big prediction, something that you're bullish on, again, let's kind of keep things positive. Like, what do you think is going to happen over the next 12 months that kind of speaks to this trend of blockchain and AI like converging?
I think the agentic side is going to blow up. I think it's like a really, I think there's going to be ways that agentic's going to help you to it's going to help us to get past friction for onboarding, and it's going to help us do things. And when you add that with like something like stablecoins, and the ability to kind of have easy transactions and support for that is going to be like huge.
Chris, your bullish prediction.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be 12 months, but I think, it's not far off where there's going to be more like agents with on-chain wallets and humans. So yeah, probably not that much further off than 12 months.
And Virtuals is going to be powering
Yeah, hopefully we'll be around. For sure.
I actually have a fun anecdote to add to that. So like I've gotten really into vibe coding. Like I'm not a technical at all. And one of the things that I did actually was to actually create an on-chain identity for my dog. I set her up with a wallet, and then I also put in like a logic where she could autonomously tip people. They said something nice to her, she'll tip them like 25 cents in USDC. And it was actually kind of wild to me to see that like happening. I'm like, wow. I mean, obviously I set limits and everything, but I think it was like the first time where I personally felt that, wow, that like we've come a really, really long way. So I'm excited for that agentic commerce and everything with Wallace. Nevin, like, what about you? What's your big bullish prediction?
I'm really bullish on robotics. That's going to be the next big thing. ChatGPT has taken LLMs to the masses, hundreds of millions of people. We haven't had that moment in robotics yet, but robotics are going to be that moment for the physical world. The same way we innovate in crypto very fast, we can ship. We want to bring that to robotics. So we're building out some MCPs, we're planning some stuff on the robotics side. We just bought our first humanoid from Booster Robotics, and we've set aside $1 million to buy a ton of Tesla Optimus bots as soon as they come out.
And Mark, like I don't know if I want a Deloitte view or I want your view, but you're welcome to share. If they differ, but I'll leave it to you.
No, I appreciate that. I love the robotics call out, and obviously agree with the agents call out as well. For the sake of something different, I'll come back to what I shared earlier of BitTensor, the Tau token. I really believe in this network. Funding 128 different subnets right now, and that number is going to grow. I really believe that's going to be a relevant player moving forward at this intersection.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. I felt like I learned a lot. Thank you so much for sharing this wonderful audience, everything that you know, and we'll see what happens 12 months from now when we're all reunited here.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
The event? Fire up that wallet and delegate your ADA to Rare Stake Pool. For over 3 years, Rare has been committed to providing high-quality staking services. Thank you for your support. The official RareEvo 2025 closeout party is Saturday night at Zouk Nightclub at Resorts World. Featuring Millennium live on stage. Doors open at 10:30 p.m. All RareEvo attendees get in free with exclusive line access. Get there early to lock in your spot. And remember, proper attire is required. This is how we close out RareEvo 2025. Zouk, Millennium, and one unforgettable send-off. Enjoying RareEvo? Then lock in your spot for next year, right now. RareEvo 2026 is already in the works, and it's going to be even bigger. More chains, more builders, more connections. Tickets are live. Go to rareevo.io/2026 to grab your early access pricing before it's gone. Don't wait. Be first. Be part of what's next. We'll see you at RareEvo 2026. Cardano D-Reps. With the Treasury now open for governance, RareEvo has 2 high-impact proposals that will amplify the Cardano community. Unveiling the first unified global events marketing strategy for Cardano and Cardano Summit 2025, including regional tech events. Event strategy is paramount to every Layer 1, and we're scaling that success with outreach that puts Cardano at the forefront. Support growth that's proven. Submit your yes vote now. Introducing RarePack. Formalizing after RareEvo, RarePack is intended to be a political action committee powered by the RareEvo community. RarePack will exist to give blockchain builders and believers a voice, locally in your home state and all the way to Washington, D.C., fighting for fair, pro-innovation crypto policy. To learn more about RarePack, visit rarepack.io and sign up today to stay connected. Together, we're building a crypto-friendly America.
Hi everybody, I hope you all are having a great time. Next up we have Garrett Hall, Head of Developer Relations at Curve Finance. He's going to be talking about why TradFi stablecoins need DeFi stablecoins. Come on up, Garrett.
GM, how's everyone doing today? Thank you, Cole, for a fantastic introduction. I am, in fact, Garrett Hall with Curve Finance. It's our first time here at the RareEvo event, so we've had a fantastic time, and thank you for everyone for joining. And he is correct, I am here to talk about the very Stablecoin Genius Act, or why TradFi stablecoins need DeFi stablecoins. And what's absolutely great about doing research for this is I'm sure that everyone, no matter what particular cryptocurrency project you follow, I'm sure that you all have noticed something, which is that when you turn to your social media feeds, everyone happens to be an expert. So it was really, really easy to research this. And the Genius Act in particular has proven that everyone is a genius on this topic. So it was great. I just need to load up my feed, read some threads and bookmark them. But then, as I was going through them, I realized that there's a lot of contradictory information. So maybe they're not actually geniuses. Throughout the course of this presentation, I'm going to talk a bit first about the Genius Act, contextualize it, and why it's so important. Then we're going to dive into the differences between traditional finance or centralized stablecoins and decentralized stablecoins. And if you are not, one of the nice things about RareEvo is that a lot of the people here are very international. So I've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people came in from overseas to attend this conference, which is great work to the conference organizers for doing that. And whenever I talk to people who are international, there's a lot of misconceptions about how the US political system works. So I'm going to start this by premising in the fact that you might be crypto native, but maybe you don't know much about American politics. And can I say, if you don't know anything about American politics, I'm so envious. Can we trade places? It's so exhausting to keep up with everything that's going on in American politics for the past several decades. But if you want to think of it in terms of DAOs, essentially the way that the US political system operates is that there's 3 co-equal branches of government. We're going to ignore the judicial branch for now because it's not super relevant to the discussion. There's an executive branch, which is essentially a one-of-one multi-sig, or just like a hot wallet. It's able to go in and make as many random changes and transactions as it would like. But if you lose the private keys, everything can be absolutely undone by the next person. So a lot of the crypto policy you're seeing that's coming out of Washington, D.C., it can change very, very rapidly. And it might be overturned in the next few years. The legislative branch, on the other hand, it is more of a 269 of 535 multi-sig. And if you've ever had the privilege of working with a DAO on even just like a 2 of 5 or a 3 of 7 multi-sig, you'll know it's very, very tough to get a bunch of multi-signers for even basic transactions. So when you're running a country with hundreds of multi-signers needed to execute legislation, that's very sticky. That sticks around for a long time. The Genius Act is one such thing. The Genius Act passed Congress by a bipartisan fashion, and that is also an incredibly rare feat because today's political environment is basically each party trying to throw the other party into prison, and yet they managed to stop trying to throw each other into prison for long enough to come together and agree that they need to pass the Stablecoin Act. So the Stablecoin Act is a very, very big deal. It's going to be around for a long time. It can't just be overturned like an executive order. It'll have to be supplanted by a legislative act. And as a result, it's really worth reading up what's in the Genius Act. And I was trying to figure out why is it that Congress is able to come together on this. And the next chart tells this picture. This is a breakdown of stablecoins by their underlying currency they're denominated in. And if you look at this chart, you'll notice it looks like the entire pie. 99.8% of all stablecoins are denominated in USD. And this is a remarkable fact because for the past decade or so that I've been following crypto, it wasn't that the United States was really pushing and trying to get the entire DeFi space to adopt the dollar. In fact, it was the complete opposite. The United States was actively trying to prevent anything going on related to crypto. This is why if you're an American citizen, you can't claim airdrops. You have to use a VPN to sign into a lot of sites because you're being geofenced and geoblocked. The United States has been incredibly hostile to cryptocurrency. So essentially for the past decade, the entire financial system of the entire planet has been completely revolutionized. And despite the US actively trying to stop it, the dollar still managed to end up as the base layer DNA of this kind of new financial internet that we're all building. It's an amazing gift for the United States. It could have gone so badly because this is just product market fit. This is the free market at will. Degens could have picked Bitcoin to denominate DeFi. They could have picked Ethereum. They could have picked Cardano. They could have picked any random asset that they created, but they decided they felt most comfortable denominating in USD. So this has happened. The other remarkable thing about stablecoins that pushed Congress to act on this is that there is also product market fit in terms of the broader market. So if you look at the chart of stablecoin adoption, it's pretty close to up only, at least relative to those of us who have been in the trenches. If you've been holding crypto assets for the past, since 2022 to maybe 2024, you probably saw your portfolio tank maybe 90%. And you can see yes, there's a little bit of drawdown in stablecoin TVL in that time, but it was pretty relatively minor. And then around 2024, it's been a bull market for stablecoins ever since. So I look at this chart and I basically see stablecoins have been up only since their inception. So stablecoins are huge. Stablecoins are not going anywhere, and they very strongly benefit the United States. So it's super important to come together and pass this Genius Act. This presentation is on the topic of the difference between TradFi or centralized stablecoins and DeFi stablecoins. So let's go ahead and dive into this just a little bit more to understand the playing field. This chart here is the total TVL of all stablecoins, or rather I should say the total market cap of all stablecoins. In green, I've shaded the various centralized stablecoins. So these are the stablecoins that are generally held dollar for dollar in a bank account. Generally have KYC built in, so if you take your stablecoin and try and purchase some GIM.MEME at a North Korean food stand, you'll probably find your tokens frozen very quickly. And as you can see, looking at this chart, pretty much centralized stablecoins are also almost the entire pie. That largest wedge is Tether. They have about 60% of the stablecoin market, about 160 billion Tether. Second place is USDC. Between the two of them, they're already about 80–90% of the entire market. It's only when you get to the third, fourth, and fifth place that you start to get to any of the decentralized stablecoins. And what's funny about these is, as they've seen the trends in the market, they're also kind of pivoting to become a bit more like centralized stablecoins themselves. So in addition to having they generally launched a decentralized stablecoin on chain, and then they realized that there's a lot of money to be made by taking that, putting in the T-bills, owning RWAs. So really all the top 10 stablecoins essentially are all centralized stablecoins. So you can look at this and basically say, why are we even talking about decentralized stablecoins? Haven't centralized stablecoins basically already taken the entire pie? Like, is there any point to even like considering decentralized stablecoins? But in this talk, I'm going to posit something of a Hegelian dialectic. I'm going to suggest that the value of stablecoins becomes much bigger when you combine centralized and decentralized stablecoins. So to do this, I'm going to look at the different risk factors between the centralized and decentralized stablecoins. If you look at centralized stablecoins, we'll start by diving into this incident in 2023 where USDC sort of had a rough weekend. I don't know how many people here followed this, but I was offline touching grass, and I looked at my phone and I was like, why is everything in DeFi down by 10%? Like, this is absolutely crazy. And what happened was there was some chaos in the traditional finance banking system. Looked like Silicon Valley Bank might not make it. There was a transaction that USDC needed to send between one bank and another, and banks don't work on weekends, so we were gonna have to wait till Monday to find out. Now at the same time, DeFi doesn't close. AMMs are still quoting prices, so USDC just went down 90 cents. It touched 85 cents in some places. And side note, like, people always ask me, how do you make money in stable coins when they're just pegged to $1? And this is the weekend where I went ahead, as soon as I got back home, it already trickled back up to 94 cents. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna buy a lot of USDC because either this is gonna repeg and I'll make 6%, or I'm gonna be working at McDonald's anyway. So like, what does it matter? This is what a centralized stablecoin depegging can kind of look like, because generally speaking, the risk factors for a centralized stablecoin are very different from the risk factors of a decentralized stablecoin. Usually they have like money in the bank, so if the banking system collapses or if the US collapses, you might be in trouble. But generally speaking, like, it wasn't that scary of an incident for me because I knew enough about USDC to know it's pretty good. And what the Genius Act is really trying to do is it's trying to actually enshrine and make centralized stablecoins an even safer bet. And this is to contrast this with a decentralized stablecoin depegging. And there's a lot of risk factors that can affect decentralized stablecoins. They don't have bank risks, but there's smart contract risks, which means that, for example, if your decentralized stablecoin is backed by, let's say I give Ethereum and I get some dollars out, if there's a smart contract bug, everything gets wired to North Korea, it's all gone, and you just lost all your money. There's no one you can go to get it back. So decentralized stablecoins, in addition to this, have just all sorts of rug risk. What if the founder is just like trying to like steal the money and has a secret backdoor? There's a lot that can go wrong with decentralized stablecoins. And this can be a problem, but this is also a feature, because one of the key fundamental facts about stablecoins in particular, and also crypto more generally, this is like a just fundamental law you can take home, is that risk and rewards are very highly correlated. When you look at yields on decentralized stablecoins or anything, the higher the risk, the higher the reward. It doesn't sound complicated. People always forget this. People will see like, hey, this new pool is launching and they're giving 20% APY. They don't stop to think, well, why is it like 20% APY? Why is this like higher than the 10% I get over here on the safer platform? And that's just the free market pricing of risk. The way that most decentralized stablecoins manage their yields basically illustrates why this is the process. Essentially what usually happens is people just dump a giant pile of money and then they aim a fire hose of emissions at it and they dare you to pick up that money. And one thing we see here in Vegas, of course, is people are always going to take a chance. So you'll see people going in, diluting that yield, grabbing that money out, until the marginal point where it's like the trader is like, I'm not sure it's worth it to grab that next dollar, and that's where the APY kind of stabilizes. And this is what you see when you see yields. Essentially, it's just the free market rank ordering of the actual underlying risk. In most cases, there are exceptions. There are issues where like maybe not enough emissions are going towards it, or maybe it's just been launched and the free market hasn't had time to equilibrate. But at equilibrium, essentially you can just run down the yields you see in DeFi and say, this is generally a proxy for risk. Contrasts very much with yield in traditional finance stablecoins, which is usually, if you're getting anything, it's usually some function of the fact that it's being held in T-bills underneath the hood. It's also a very core property of the Genius Act. So we mentioned that there's a fundamental rule, which is that risk and reward are very tightly coupled in cryptocurrency and basically all of finance. The second fundamental law is that yield is basically the best form of marketing in cryptocurrency. It kind of doesn't matter what you try and position your product to compete on. You could say like, oh, we're very composable. We have a lot of integrations. We have a cool UI. We have like the best parties. It doesn't matter. If you advertise yield, it doesn't shoot that out in social media, and you're going to see a ton of people just come in and decide if they want to pick that money up. And you can really see where if you put these two laws together, why we have so many bubblenomics in crypto. Because you can all but guarantee that there is going to be people that are chasing high yields, and you can all but guarantee that the risk and the rewards are basically like correlated. It's essentially a corollary that people are always going to keep like trying to grab this, get greedier and greedier. You're going to see 30% APYs, 40%, 50%. They're inevitably going to collapse. Crypto is going to go through another bear market. And we see these cycles just play out in like an extremely rapid time frame relative to the traditional finance markets. So you could actually argue that this is part of the genius of the Genius Act, in that they looked at this and they said, well, we don't want to undermine confidence in the dollar. We don't want to have these collapses in stablecoins. And they conspired to try and make basically the Genius Act make centralized stablecoins very, very safe. And if you saw the DeFi panel earlier, you got to see Sam Kazemian talking about like the misconception that the Genius Act is actually prohibiting all yield. And they do a good job of limiting it. But let's talk about this for a second. If you take away yield from stablecoins, who's the big winner? It's Tether. As we saw earlier, Tether already has 60% of the market. They're absolutely in the catbird seat because they have about 160 billion tethers, mostly in the form of treasuries. They get about 3-5%, whatever they get off that, and that goes entirely to them. Tether does not give any yield away to the end user. And it's a fantastic business. It's probably the most profitable company on the entire planet per employee. And their success is one of the reasons we're seeing so many other companies jealous of this and trying to launch their own stablecoins. It's going to be very tough to compete with Tether though, because the reason they're able to get away with this is because they've been around for so long. They launched this back when basically launching a stablecoin was an extremely gray area. It was kind of this offshore thing. It was always FUDed. They have like the reserves behind it, but they've survived. They've essentially grown into systemically important status. And because they are now so big and they've been around so long, there's millions of integrations that have been built with Tether throughout all of DeFi, all of cryptocurrency. In fact, they are in a position where, in general, other protocols and asset issuers are interested in paying and subsidizing a liquidity pool with Tether because Tether is so important to access that network, access their network effects, that they're willing to subsidize the cost of pairing with Tether. So Tether gets free liquidity across the entire system. It's going to be very, very tough to compete with that. But it's still very profitable to try. So the second place stablecoin mentioned is USDC. They, of course, recovered from their depeg. Circle IPO'd just in June. And this year graph shows off the business of how to run a centralized stablecoin. It's a complex business, it can be very tough, but you can see they eke out about a 9% profit margin, which is pretty good when they've been able to grow to about 60 billion USDC. And that IPO also shows off just how frothy and excited the broader market is to try and find ways to speculate on the stablecoin narrative. Because as mentioned, you can wait for a depeg and try and buy that up. That's a little tough. You can try and earn yield on it, but that's slow and steady, and everyone wants their money today. But how do you profit quickly off that stablecoin narrative? The IPO was the first way for retail traditional finance investors to actually bet on the stablecoin narrative that they've heard some about. And that's probably the reason that the IPO was priced around 30 and quickly popped to 90. And then, of course, they probably saw that operating chart I just showed. And more recently, it's kind of come down as people realize that it is a very, very tough business to be in. So before we move on, just want to close out this concept of USDC and Circle and clear up this misconception about how is it that the Genius Act prohibits yield. If that's the killer use case for crypto, doesn't that just kind of undermine anyone's ability to actually be able to compete with Tether? Because that's one thing that you could do to try and gain market share. You could take some of the T-bill yield and you can give it to people. And there is a very specific language in the Genius Act, which is explaining how a specific regulated, I forget the exact terminology, but how a specific regulated stablecoin within the purview of the Genius Act is not itself able to offer yield. but it doesn't prohibit partners from providing what they call things like rewards. So if you notice USDC, you could still take your USDC, put it in Coinbase, you can still earn something like 3-4%. I do it, it works great for me. And pretty recently on a, I think it was an investor call, Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, was asked like, well, how are you doing this? Doesn't the Genius Act prohibit the ability to give out yield? And they basically, Brian Armstrong said, well, first of all, we're not the asset issuer. The Genius Act only prohibits the asset issuer from offering yield. Coinbase and Circle co-founded USDC, but in 2023, Coinbase basically stepped away. So they're no longer responsible for issuing it. So it's entirely kosher for Circle to issue the USDC and then pass that to Coinbase, and Coinbase can offer the yield as the partner. And they don't call it yield as the other thing, because yield actually has a specific definition. They call it rewards. So the Genius Act was very genius in the way it was written to actually allow for incentivization of stablecoins, because the people who understood it, they know that the US dollar is important. They know that some form of financial imperialism is sort of important for spreading US interests around the world. And essentially the way the Genius Act is constructed is to build this very specific provision where if you follow these rules, you get extra special protections. Your stablecoin is extremely safe. And in fact, it's probably even safer, I was talking with Sam earlier, than if you have money in a bank account. You can only have like 250K insured. If your stablecoin provider goes insolvent, you actually, like as a bankruptcy creditor, have claims above $250,000. My understanding, again, not a lawyer, you should not be taking legal advice from probably anyone at this conference. The point about yield, though, is that if the centralized stablecoin issuers are not themselves going to be in the business of giving out this yield, where should they be looking to give out the yield? And what's nice is that in DeFi, there's high risk, but there's high reward. So this is the crux of why I think that TradFi stablecoins and DeFi stablecoins can and should coexist. Because DeFi stablecoins are very good at finding yield. There's crazy ones like the meme coin-backed stablecoins that might be offering 5,000%, but generally speaking, if you just look at the empirical evidence, all the big successful centralized stablecoins, the ones who have gained market share and didn't have the foresight to launch 10 years ago, they launched 1 or 2 years ago, the way that they've been successful has been by leaning heavily into the DeFi stablecoins. So if you are yourself an asset issuer and you are looking to maybe get involved with the DeFi projects, I can quickly plug one project that I helped launch, which is the Open Stablecoin Index shown here. What this is built off the Reserve Protocol DTF, or Decentralized Token Folio. It's the analog of an on-chain ETF, but instead of maybe having an index of 50 stocks, this is an index of 10 open source stablecoin projects. It's a quarterly reweight, so you just buy the token, you hold on to it, and each quarter the governance holders decide which tokens belong in here. Any of these projects are really good. They're probably not offering 50%, but they're probably offering really good, and a lot of traditional finance players have found a lot of success partnering with it. And incidentally, getting back to that point about how does the casual investor profit off the stablecoin narrative, this also provides a way to profit off this on the decentralized side. So this launched a couple months ago, launched at $1. As of the screenshot, I was trading at $1.78. You guys can do the math on that one. Other notable projects that have really found product market fit at this intersection of DeFi and TradFi. Maple Finance, they are making a very big bet that all these companies that are currently buying Bitcoin and putting them on their balance sheets, their CFOs are going to say, we'd like to earn yield on that. So they are working as on-chain asset managers to find yield for that Bitcoin. So it's this perfect intersection of TradFi and DeFi. And you can see the numbers speak for themselves. This project is growing very fast, quarter over quarter. They also incidentally have their own decentralized stablecoin, Syrup USDC, which is feeding into their plans because they see that TradFi stablecoins need DeFi stablecoins. On this front, it hasn't launched yet, but check out Yield Basis. They're also working on a way of removing impermanent loss from liquidity pools, which is going to redound to the benefit of potentially higher yields on Bitcoin. So they might be getting into the same space, targeting the same intersection of TradFi and DeFi. Of course, BlackRock is got things nailed on the traditional finance side. They probably are the most equipped entity on the entire planet to navigate the movement of funds from people's like retirement portfolios into things. They've very quickly, the BUIDL fund that they launched has very quickly rocketed up the leaderboards. It's, I think it was like 5th place on that list of stablecoins I showed earlier, and they're growing very, very fast. The way that they are partnering with a third-party entity called Elixir to incentivize curve pools is probably a perfect case study if you are interested in yourself learning how they actually run this template of nailing the intersection of TradFi and DeFi. And finally, I've just got a couple minutes left, but because I spend a lot of time on Curve, but people who don't know a lot about this conference might not know a lot about Curve, just a quick explanation of what Curve is and what it does. Curve launched in 2020, essentially on the back of a stablecoin trading algorithm that was better than the existing AMM algorithms. And at the time, this is kind of like used as like a way of attacking Curve, because stablecoins weren't the hot thing back then. It's like, how on earth are you going to like make money as just a stablecoin exchange? You're just going to be earning like pennies on the dollar here. Essentially, the way that it works, I won't bore you with the technical details, but when you're trading crypto, you want a line like that grain line, which moves very quickly as prices adjust. When you're trading stablecoins, though, it's generally a dollar for a dollar, so it needs to be more of a flat line. So the innovation was to say, well, why don't we just make a curve that looks a lot more like the flat line, but if there's a depeg, then it can go wild at the edges. This has birthed a fantastic business. Curve has since launched crypto trading algorithms. Curve has launched its own decentralized stablecoin, Curve USD, which is a member of that open stablecoin index basket. If you're interested in geeking out about stablecoins, if you're interested in learning more about how Curve as a platform can facilitate stablecoin trading, maybe you're interested in launching, maybe your institution has just launched a stablecoin, maybe you run L2 or your own chain and you'd like to bring Curve trading onto it, or maybe you just would like more information about anything we talked about here in this presentation. If so, my name is Garrett. You can find me on X, Curve Cap. You can go to curve.finance, find me in any of the social channels there, very easy to get in touch with. Other than that, I hope everyone enjoys your time at the RareEvo event, and I will catch you all outside.
Enjoying RareEvo? Then lock in your spot for next year right now. RareEvo 2026 is already in the works, and it's going to be even bigger. More chains, more builders, more connections. Tickets are live. Go to rareevo.io/2026 to grab your early access pricing before it's gone. Don't wait. Be first. Be part of what's next. We'll see you at RareEvo 2026. Enjoying the event? Fire up that wallet and delegate your ADA to Rare Stake Pool. For over 3 years, Rare has been committed to providing high-quality staking services. Thank you for your support. Cardano DREVs. With the Treasury now open for governance, RareEvo has 2 high-impact proposals that will amplify the Cardano community. Unveiling the first unified global events marketing strategy for Cardano and Cardano Summit 2025, including regional tech events. Event strategy is paramount to every Layer 1, and we're scaling that success with outreach that puts Cardano at the forefront. Support growth that's proven. Submit your yes vote now. Introducing Rare Pack. Formalizing after RareEvo, Rare Pack is intended to be a political action committee powered by the RareEvo community. Rare Pack will exist to give blockchain builders and believers a voice, locally in your home state and all the way to Washington, D.C., fighting for fair, pro-innovation crypto policy. To learn more about Rare Pack, visit rarepack.io and sign up today to stay connected. Together, We're building a crypto-friendly America. The official RareEvo 2025 closeout party is Saturday night at Zouk Nightclub at Resorts World. Featuring Illenium live on stage. Doors open at 10:30 p.m. All in free with exclusive line access. Get there early to lock in your spot. And remember, proper attire is required. This is how we close out RareEvo 2025. Zouk, Illenium, and one unforgettable send-off.
Great. All right, well, first of all, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us this afternoon. I know happy hour is going on, so we'll try to keep it fun and light and get you on to happy hour as soon as we can. But thank you to all my panelists for joining me this afternoon for bridging the gap between Web 2 and Web 3. So what I'd like to do is, starting to my left here, is allow each of the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll hopefully have a really good and insightful discussion. So Ryan, I'll start with you.
Great. Thank you, appreciate it. Ryan Rugg, I'm currently the head of digital assets for Citi TTS. I'm talking about bridging the gap between Web 2 and Web 3. Been trying to do this for over a decade. Started out at a fintech startup called R3 in 2015-16, then went to a large global system integrator, and now at Citi, launching Citi Token Service and really trying to bridge that gap in the industry.
My name is Maz. I'm with Revolut. I help the company in several areas, one of which is helping lead the crypto business. Some of you may have heard of Revolut, but for those who haven't, Revolut is an international fintech and a licensed European bank. We serve more than 60 million customers globally across 39 countries. Crypto is a core part of our product offering, and I look forward to this panel with all of you. Thank you.
Caitlin Long, founder of Custodia Bank, helped Wyoming pass
more than 50 blockchain enabling laws now in the last 8 or 9 legislative sessions since 2018. And Custodia put stablecoins in our business model in 2020, which is when we applied for the patent on US dollar stablecoins, and it was granted in 2022.
I'm Thorsten. I'm the head of product at Xerox and Matcha. Xerox is a leading DEX aggregator. We power a lot of the swaps and wallets, and then Matcha is one of the front ends where users can swap directly. Yeah, I've been in the space since 2017, 2018, and investing, and then at Coinbase and recently Xerox.
Great. So Ryan, I'm going to go ahead and get started with you. So, Citi and Six Digital Exchange will pilot a tokenized private market, assets later on this year. So how do you envision a client moving from a tokenized equity position as more possibilities for liquidity and regulatory clarity take hold?
So when we started on this journey, I've now been at Citi 3 years, it was really about the mission, the vision. Like, the future of networks is borderless. It's always on, multi-asset, multi-currency, liquidity and payments is really where we started the focus. So we went live in September with a product called Citi Token Service. And the idea is we tokenize deposits for our clients and be able to move amongst, right now, 4 of our branches. Citi has 90 plus branches globally, and there are banking hours, there's cutoff, there's weekends. So being able to really move that money frictionally across. And we started with cash or fiat, because if you can't tokenize cash, one of the most simplistic assets, how are you going to tokenize other assets like equities and other things like that? But the future state, we do believe, is multi-asset. The whole DDP, atomic settlement, but I've done hundreds of POCs in this space over the last decade, and originally we always had to go back to the TradFi rails settlement for cash. Now, starting with the cash and then extrapolating to other assets is the idea. So you mentioned we're partnering with Six. Our strategy is build by partner. We're not going to build everything internally, but about really being able to build these scalable platforms.
Great. And to kind of follow up on that, large banks really are often seen as kind of the gatekeepers. What have you really learned in building Citi Token services that could help DeFi protocols plug into core banking systems without compromising a lot of these risk controls that you need?
So we started on a private permission version of Ethereum, always with the intent of never having a Citi token. Like, our clients don't want a Citi token or another bank token. They want multi-bank. Our clients have hundreds, if not thousands, of bank accounts across multiple banks. So how do we really bridge that gap? And that's what we've been focused on, and also partnering with the industry. So one is to be able to, from a technology standpoint, also obfuscate the complexity for our clients to be able to access this world. So a lot of our clients can't even manage tokens on their book, let alone real time. So what we're trying to do is bridge that gap and help our clients either through API or log on through Citi Direct to have access to tokens and real-time liquidity and payments across the globe.
Great. Well, and it's a really perfect segue to some questions that I want to ask you about Revolut, what you guys are building and doing over there. So how is Revolut really closing the gaps for everyday purchasers so that crypto really feels as seamless as sending a card payment?
Okay, so at Revolut, we've been onboarding a lot of users onto crypto. So we are not a crypto company, we're a fintech, but we're converting a lot of these customers into crypto customers. And apart from just doing day-to-day trading and speculation, we wanted to deliver value to our customers in a way that's meaningful to them. The average person needs to find value in using crypto into day-to-day activities. One product we launched last year that started to deliver on that vision is crypto cards. And crypto cards works no different than your debit card, credit card that you have in your wallet. How do you use your cards? You go to a merchant, you tap, pay, and you get the product, and the merchant gets their payment. With crypto cards, it's the same thing. We know what your crypto balances are across all crypto assets on your Revolut app. And what we do is, it's a virtual card on your phone, or even a physical card that we give you that you can put in your wallet. And you can go to a merchant and tap that payment. And what we do is convert the crypto that you choose. It could be Bitcoin, ETH, a stablecoin, whatever it is. We convert that on our trading platform back into fiat, and then we settle with fiat using existing fiat rails with the merchant. That way your crypto balances can be used for day-to-day purchases anywhere that you may want to go to. So that would be an example of how to deliver value using crypto.
Yeah, and to kind of defer to that point, what have been some of the challenges that you guys have seen with more traditional, I guess, for lack of a better term, kind of Web 2 purchasers and users of traditional fiat currencies and getting them to be more receptive and open to utilizing cryptocurrencies in day-to-day purchases?
Getting anyone to adopt emerging tech or getting them adapting to do something in a new way that they're not used to takes just a bit of education, but more importantly, UX. I cannot emphasize how important UX is, and I'm not even a designer. But if you can make something super easy to use, that your grandmother can figure it out in 5 seconds, then they're gonna start using it. And with that card example that I just gave, the fact that it's on your phone and you use it the exact same way you use Apple Pay, it's almost intuitive. It doesn't matter if you used Chase, Amex, or that crypto card. You'll tap, pay, and it's done.
Great, great. Caitlin, I want to turn to you, and I have a couple of questions for you. So, you know, Custodia and Vantage Bank tokenized demand deposits via Avid, you know, activating a new payment rail inside the U.S. banking system. So, with the Genius Act coming into the fold, how does that kind of alter the scaling strategy for Avid, especially across Fed master accounts and cross-banking interoperability? I know it's kind of a in-the-weeds question, but I think a lot of people would be very interested to hear that.
Yeah, well, I'll start by answering that. Balaji gave me a good way to describe why the Fed master account is so important. It's root access to FedWire. And right now, that is controlled by certain organizations that control access to that and don't want the crypto industry to have such access and have actively been blocking us for 5 years, more than 5 years. That is starting to thaw, although it isn't completely melted yet. The impact of that is that unless you have direct root access to FedWire, you can't go back and forth between traditional and crypto rails. You have to go through an intermediary to have the ability to go between crypto and traditional US dollars. And so that was the holy grail. I knew going in, Custodia is a passion project for me. I knew going in that this was the most difficult task to attack on behalf of the crypto industry. And we have not opened that yet, but there are green shoots in that very area. And the banks are fighting as hard as they possibly can to keep the crypto companies out, because in large part, the banks have been for years stymied. All but the largest banks have been stymied in adopting modern technology. It is really stunning, as somebody who came into it from the outside, that the banks are just now getting to cloud, much less APIs. All but the largest banks have been stymied in upgrading their technology. They're 10 to 15 years behind, and this is their Uber moment.
Yeah, I think to your point, and one of the things I wanted to touch on that I know you could definitely speak passionately to in some ways is, in 2023, you're really warned of this co-coordinated Operation Choke Point 2.0.
Yeah.
And really after the Fed really rejected, some things with Custodia, and you guys faced a series of debankings during the Biden administration years, now, barely after a few weeks after the Genius Act has become law, and we're seeing obviously a different approach by this new administration, do you feel really kind of the overall kind of climate is thawing in that regard?
It is thawing, but it's not melted yet. The Fed, for example, still has its guidance to the banks that require the banks to use permissioned blockchains and not allowing them to use permissionless blockchains like Cardano. And fintechs are allowed to use them, but banks are not. So is that going to be reversed? I assume so. In 10 days, the Wyoming Blockchain Symposium is taking place in Jackson Hole, and there are 2 Fed governors, it just got announced. There are 2 Fed governors speaking there, Bowman and Waller, both of whom are making speeches about crypto. And the announcement that came out yesterday that I'm sure everybody saw about the executive order, it's kind of funny how the executive order was written. Custodia is a litmus test. The Fed so tried to kill us that it pressured our partner banks to close our bank accounts, and I don't know of anybody else who was debanked more than we were. We were blocked from having a master account, and then when we tried to operate with partner banks, they went after our partner banks. And the executive order actually requires the reinstatement by the partner banks of those who were debanked. So I put out a tweet last night, the litmus test for the executive order success is whether all 5 of those banks come back and reinstate Custodia's bank accounts. And we will know that by December.
Yeah, and to your point, so even if we're on this track for getting regulatory clarity, but what do you think is still the biggest regulatory hurdle that maybe is kind of a bit overlooked and not discussed?
Yeah, great question, Rick. It's the Fed. I can speak, I have to be careful what I say because of confidentiality obligations, but I can say, because it is publicly, you could figure this out, that the Fed was so anti-crypto, it ran out the people there that knew what they were doing. And it is public information the custodian went through a bank exam, and of course, it wouldn't surprise you to know that they pulled in the people who knew what they were doing. And I can tell you that a lot of the people who were involved in that exam are gone. One of them, I found out, left because they told him he had to sell his crypto. He couldn't stay at the Fed and continue to own crypto. And by the way, that is true of all the regulators across the board. In a recent bank exam, I personally downloaded a wallet, loaded up crypto of my own into that wallet. We had it on, I think, 4 different laptops, and just passed the laptops around so the examiners could actually transact with each other and get a sense for how it worked without violating the rules. And our banking commissioner called me and thanked me for doing that, because they wouldn't have had the ability to interact with crypto and to be able to look at a block explorer and watch how they were volleying crypto transactions back and forth to each other. This is not radical stuff, but if you're a regulator that is prohibited from doing any of this on your own, and you get the opportunity to do it without breaking the rules, that's important. But it just goes to show you how backwards things are, and how many people who were crypto curious were either run out by the anti-crypto Operation Choke Pointers at the federal bank regulators, or who frankly just walked out on their own because they had better opportunities and they saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the evidence of that definitely speaks for itself, what we've seen the past 4 years. But definitely, as you said, the ice is thawing a little bit, and the tone and the posture is definitely shifting. I want to turn to you and talk about some things that Matcha and ZeroX has been doing. So my first question to you is how is the team at ZeroX really approaching protecting users from rug pulls and other forms of crypto scams while still kind of balancing accessibility for new tokens?
Yeah, definitely. It's a really interesting problem. So essentially, from a mission perspective, we want to be able to give users access to any token that's out there. We don't want to be in a situation where we go in and we apply a censorship layer and saying, hey, this is not a good token, this is a scam, we sort of block it. But at the same time, we want to make sure the users are safe. And so we started building tools in Matcha in our front end that start giving the user access to this type of information. So for example, we compute liquidity scores for tokens. So we essentially look at, are you able to trade this token without incurring 2.5% or more slippage? And we assign sort of a score based on that. And that can help you, right? Because if you're trading a token that says it's called Ethereum with a space at the end, but it has a liquidity score of 0 and you can't trade more than $5 of it, it's probably not the actual Ethereum token. Similarly, we started using chain audit protocol or audit vendors that essentially audit the smart contract and come back with vulnerabilities, right? So is there a sell tax? Is this token actually blocked from being sellable and things like that? And we started surfacing all of this to the user in a easy to understand UI. And so then the user can really make their own decision, right? Is this something I wanna trade or not? And then I think the second part of this is also about how we rank order what we show to the user, right? So for example, Pudgy Penguins, the Pengu token has been on a tear. And so if you go into a lot of dexes and you search for Pengu, you find the actual token on Solana, but you might also find 20, 30, 40 different tokens that have Pengu or variants in their name, but they have actually nothing to do with the project. They're just copycats. And we sort of pull in all this information we get from the security audit, from the liquidity score, and all in general sort of looking at activity to then infer, okay, if a user searches for Pengu, they likely want the actual official Pengu token with a 3 billion market cap. They're not interested in the knockoff on some other chain, and we sort of surface that quote-unquote legitimate token first. But we still show the other ones too, right? Like maybe there is a legitimate use case where somebody wants those tokens, but yeah, so it's about just how we give the information to the user to make their own decision, but we don't want to like make it for the user.
Yeah, and to that point, the core theme of your work really is centered around abstracting complexity, and this is kind of touching on some of the things that Maz talked about as well. What's the one UX friction that you still haven't cracked, or really maybe the space as a whole hasn't really cracked yet? And really kind of further to that point, would regulatory clarity help with that? Would certain regulatory regimes assist with that? Or is it just kind of more of getting the market up to speed and helping educate users?
I think it's probably a little bit more on the, at least for us, I think it's more on the technical and sort of like market side. I would say the biggest complexity right now is probably around just like multi-chain sort of complexity, right? So we moved from having Ethereum and Bitcoin and a handful of chains to now, I think there's 200 plus chains that have DEX activity, right? And so everything is really fragmented, and tokens exist on dozens or hundreds of chains. And so now as a user, I need to potentially have multiple wallets. I need to know which chain a token is on. I need to have gas on each of those chains. And I think a lot of that isn't necessarily needed by the user, right? Because as a customer, I'm not coming and saying, oh, I want to go buy this one token because it's on that chain. It's usually, I heard about this token, I want to go buy it. It just so happens it's on Base or Arbitrum or Solana, right? But I think for most users, where it is not actually the main sort of consideration. And so I think working on that technical abstraction layer of how can we hide away a little bit more of the plumbing that's underneath and just make it easy for the user, right? You have token A and you want to sell it and buy token B. We route it through all the different chains and we figure all that out in the background, but we don't think that necessarily needs to be shown to the user at all times.
Brian, I was going to kind of say, do you have anything to kind of piggyback off that kind of from the larger banking institutional perspective?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more about being able to obfuscate the complexity of a blockchain away from our clients. So, when I joined Citi, the easier it is, like you think of like inflection points in history, and you think of, in the early 2000s, like with the, Blackberries and PDAs, like until the iPhone came along and was like very user friendly, it was really hard for people. And that was almost like that aha moment. So like taking some design decisions from the past, we completely obfuscate the blockchain away from our clients. You log on either via a UI or through an API and are able to access Citi Token Service. And it's a drop-down box. So you're able to, drop down, to move it from New York to Singapore. So we'll mint the token in New York, we'll send it to Singapore and burn it. So it's cash for cash for our clients also, which is really important. Like these large multinationals, like their treasury management and ERP systems aren't set up for tokens yet. So how do we make it as easy as possible to use like day one? Do I think in the future that they're going to have wallets and host nodes and manage their own keys? Absolutely. But you have to meet your clients where they are on their journey. So I think that like really resonates with me. The easier it is, and you mentioned it as well with credit cards, the easier it is to use for clients, the faster you'll see adoption in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. Maz, do you have any thoughts on that as well? Yeah, on obviously the side aspects of users onboarding in a way that UX is a lot easier to understand, and like you mentioned, kind of going back to some of the earlier days of early banking systems that made things a little bit easier and more intuitive for users.
Onboard them to Web3.
Yeah.
We launched a product about 3 years ago called Learn and Earn, and that's just an educational tool. At that point, very few of our users were crypto users, and we wanted to somehow incentivize them to A, onboard, B, learn, C, become active in a meaningful way. And what Learn and Earn is, it tells a user, sign up, we'll give you a short course or tutorial that's no more than 3 or 4 screens long. You learn up about Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any of the other tokens that we have live. And then we give you a short quiz that could be no more than 2 or 3 questions. And then we gift you crypto of that blockchain or crypto project. That spurred such a growth curve on our platform. And it wasn't just they did it to get the money and then dump it and then move on. They actually adopted it and then bought more, and then the HODL rate was actually more than half. And then the net buy was about 5x.
Wow.
And what started with just a few 100,000 people trying that educational tool resulted in more than 6 million in less than 2 years. That is a way to onboard. And now all these people, super active on the platform. So that's one way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And Caitlin, I'm interested in your perspective on this because I think, from the outside, I think one would expect that a lot of the customers that would come into Custodia, maybe if they're doing things on the crypto side of things, they would have some baseline level knowledge. But I think even when you're kind of saying, okay, you're starting off here with a baseline layer, how do you go to that next level, right? Even if assuming they kind of start off here, what does that look like?
Well, and it does look like abstracting away the complexity. And the vast majority of US dollar payments are originated through the banking system, again, using what is mostly old technology. The ACH system was created in the 1970s and really hasn't been upgraded since then. Fedwire is not that much different. And that's, just to give you some sense, 1.1 quadrillion dollars worth of payments run through Fedwire, 87 trillion of ACH payments run through ACH, and then cross-border through SWIFT is about 400 some trillion. So that gives you a sense. And by the way, just to put that into perspective, those that are predicting, I think the Citi's bullish case for stablecoins is 3.7 trillion. When you look at those numbers, 3.7 trillion to me strikes me as very low. But how do you deal with converting that 1.1 quadrillion of Fedwire and 87 trillion of ACH and 400 trillion of SWIFT to these new technology rails? A lot of it has to do with the ability to be backwards compatible with the old technology that the banks use, because the vast majority, really, truly all payments run through the banking system. The question is, how much of them are originated through banks versus non-banks? Also to give you a sense, JP Morgan and Wells Fargo control more than 50% of ACH volume, and Wise put out a study that showed that their markup on ACH payments it can be as high as 100 times. A 100x markup on ACH, right? This is like shooting fish in a barrel to improve the end user's cost, but getting them to move over from these traditional old school payment systems. It comes down to the UX as well as the so-called stablecoin sandwich, using stablecoins as an intermediary as opposed to going directly through a Fed master account. Now, this is really interesting because a couple weeks ago, I learned the US Treasury is considering issuing tokenized T-bills. And the impact of that is that it enables the US Treasury not to have to depend on the Fed. Anyone who's watching Treasury versus Fed interactions, and anyone who's studied financial history knows there's consistently a clash between the Treasury and the Fed. Treasury would love not to have to rely on the Fed for payment systems. If they can tokenize T-bills, guess what? That becomes a competitor to Fedwire. So things are going to get really spicy if that ends up happening, and if the Fed continues to not play ball with the administration.
Yeah, and I think what I'd like to do next is let's zoom out a little bit and maybe kind of go into the future a little bit. And when we think about maybe, let's say 5 years out, what is a seamless, enterprise or retail, maybe token to cash or tokenized equity to cash experience look like for the average end user? And maybe if you like, you can expand on maybe some of the regulation that still kind of lags behind kind of that vision becoming a reality. So we'll start down the line, and Ryan, I'll start with you, and we can go from there.
So if I think of the future in 5 years from now, so the last couple of years we've been laying the foundation to be able to move a token within the four walls of our institution. We move $5 trillion a day. We're now moving billions on CTS, but that's really nothing compared to the volumes that we move. So how do we start adding multi-asset, multi-currency to really build that out. As also, it's like bridging that gap between Web 2 and Web 3, making fiat and tokens synonymous in the sense, because like right now, if you have to go back to fiat, it still takes time, expensive, you still have to pay for FX. How do we make that whole entire experience seamless? And also for our large multinationals that, you know, want to earn additional yield, so they can sweep their money instantly from Singapore to New York, invest in a tokenized money market fund for hours, minutes. There's no lag in the system. So really removing that legacy, that lag in the system for multi-assets, for cash as well as securities, is I think was like the future goal.
Great, Mass?
I have no idea what's going to happen in 5 years, but I can give you a few opinions on a few topics. One, I think crypto adoption is going to scale massively. Two, I think regulation is going to get clarified in almost every jurisdiction around the world. Three, the notion of crypto versus fiat, which she just alluded to, I think this needs to disappear over time. It's just money. It doesn't matter if it's a paper, a credit on a database, or a crypto token. It's all going to be some asset that moves from A to B to settle for some value. I think remittance is going to be the biggest use case for stablecoins and other crypto in the next few years. Stablecoins, I think, are going to allow the average user to be able to send money from A to B in a way that's either cheaper or faster, or allows them to enter a geo that they couldn't using existing rails. So I'm very much focused on that topic because I think that's going to grow significantly in the next few years. Beyond that, you asked about tokenized equities and securities. I think everything you're trading today eventually can go on-chain and can be traded on-chain. That's my 5-year view.
I completely agree with you, Mass, and I'm glad you said that. None of us have any idea what's actually going to happen in the next 5 years. And in fact, actually related to that, we're working with Vantage Bank, with whom we've done issuance of, we call it both tokenized bank deposits and stablecoins. If it's issued by them, it's a tokenized bank deposit. If it's issued by us, it's a stablecoin. But it's the same technology. All of us would recognize it as the same technology. It's just different regulatory structure. And we debate a lot. How is this market going to go? As I alluded earlier, the banks originate the vast majority of payments, so they're going to want to do tokenized bank deposits. The non-banks are nipping at their heels to issue stablecoins. Which direction is the market going to go, and is the market going to care whether it's a stablecoin that's backed 100% by high-quality liquid assets, or a traditional tokenized bank deposit that's backed by illiquid bank loans but FDIC insurance and liquidity facilities like the Fed discount window? The market is going to have the opportunity to vote with its feet, and we don't know yet what the preferences are going to be.
Yeah, I think I agree with all the points, and yeah, same here. I feel like none of us know what exactly is going to happen in 5 years, but I think a few of my sort of predictions or hopes, I really think like, yeah, almost everything is going to be tokenized eventually, right? So all the assets that we trade today will be on the blockchain. I think we'll actually create a lot more liquidity and ease of use. When I think about like even private equity funds, for example, it's really hard to actually get out of them before any liquidity events today. And I think if we actually are able to tokenize those, make them tradable on chain, I think it will actually create a lot of like secondary markets that are not there today. So I think regulatory clarity there around just having securities on chain, allowing DEXs, AMMs to interact with securities tokens, I think it's going to be really crucial. And then yeah, I think for like end users, really just making it easier to interact with crypto, right? Like I think what Lars said about the crypto cards, we had a similar product at Coinbase. I think it made it really easy for customers to say, hey, I have some assets, I can now spend them at the coffee shop, right? And it can be Cardano or whatever in the background, but it's still like, I think while it's a seamless experience at the point of sale, it becomes actually very painful then when you do your taxes, right? Because then it's like every time I buy something, now I'm like, okay, well, this thing at a cost basis of X, now I sold it for Y, so I paid $5 for the coffee, but I actually also incurred $3 in like capital gains taxes. And so I think there's still some clunkiness sort of in the system overall, and I think getting some more clarity on how that all could be treated and simplified, I think would be really awesome.
Absolutely. And so one question I'd want to ask you, Caitlin, around this is, when we think about balancing financial innovation while consumer protection still needs to kind of take hold, we think about, well, what are some ways in practicality that can actually happen? Is it sandboxes, public-private partnerships, things of that nature? What's really, I think, missing, or in your opinion, what do you think is really missing, at least from the US right now, from kind of moving that ball forward?
Is that for me?
Yeah, for you.
It's a really good question. Some of it is just dependent upon how much and where the markets go and how fast the regulators get up to speed. You asked me earlier who was the biggest impediment. I still think it's the Fed, and it's going to be the Fed for a while because they're the ones that ultimately, every US dollar ultimately has to clear through the Fed if it's going through the banking system. If these new technologies are not reliant on Fedwire and ultimately don't have to clear through the Fed, then the Fed loses its power, right? And how much does it play ball with the Treasury? That's going to be where the friction is, right? Because the Fed does two things for the US Treasury right now. One is it handles Fedwire, so all the US government payments go through the Fed on behalf of the US Treasury, but it's also the securities custodian for T-bills. So when Ryan and I started working together more than a decade ago, I think it's a couple of jobs ago for each of us, we were trying to figure out how to get corporate stock registered digitally native in the state of Delaware. So that, like right now, when you register a corporation, you're going to get a PDF, and you might think that's digital, but we all know that's really just it's just a picture of an analog stock certificate, right? It's not natively digital. If we can get natively digital assets, then there is no need for a custodian anymore. So US Treasury can dominate the Fed if it just tokenizes T-bills, doesn't need the Fed to be its custodian for securities, if there is no such thing as a paper security anymore, and also, or an analog security. And then if there's no reliance on Fedwire and you can just use T-bills, tokenized T-bills to make payments, you don't need the old payment system anymore. So this stuff is really, I think we're headed for just radical change. And so much of it depends upon how much the Fed plays ball, because they are so far behind the 8 ball right now in being at the table. They could have had all of this stay within the banking system had they played ball about 5 years ago. But that ship has sailed, and because they're fighting with the White House right now so much on interest rates, among other things, the fact that Treasury might roll them and basically say, we don't need you, we don't need Fedwire, we don't need you to be our securities custodian for T-bills anymore, that would be a radical change. But it might actually happen.
Wow, yeah, absolutely, and that would be a very radical change indeed. I think, and this is kind of a general question to everybody here, because obviously we're talking about large institutional banks, people who are onboarding fintech platforms, people into crypto. When we think about interoperability, and I think that's kind of one of the main concerns that we see a lot of people talk about today, is there's all of these different builders and different aspects that are innovating our financial system on a global scale, but how do they all work from an interoperability standpoint, and what are some of the challenges around that, and will we be able to actually solve for them? So Ryan, I'll start with you on that. What are some of the big interoperability challenges that you guys are seeing, and what are some ways maybe we could think about overcoming?
Yeah, so when I joined Citi, they were working with the Fed on the Regulated Liability Network, as well as several other networks to join, because the idea is, like, our clients want multi-bank. They don't want a Citi token. They want a token that's interoperable with multiple banks. So we were working with the Fed early days on that, but realized we couldn't join a network unless we could, move a token safely and soundly in the four walls of our own institution. And so I've been building out that now with Citi Token Service, but still very focused on that interoperability. And we've had to be on private permissioned up until this administration, where you've seen them rescind 1179, 121. You've seen them, kind of ease some of the regulations. But even with, the Genius, bill, and now Clarity coming hopefully this fall, it's still, how are regulators going to put that into practice? What are the frameworks that they're going to put in place? What interoperability are they going to allow us to do? Are they going to allow us to be on public chains, or is it going to be a private permission like BlackRock does with BUIDL, where it's whitelisted wallets? So it's not clear, and so we need clarity, the Clarity bill to kind of pass. Also, our token's going to be treated like cash. When cash comes into the bank, I do all the KYC, AML, Bank Security Act, all the checks and balances to ensure that the money, is proper. When the money leaves, what the entity chooses to use the money on, if it's M&A, if it's you being used as sanctioned, that's not not city's responsibility. When it comes back into the bank, again, we do all the checks and balances. With tokens, because of the transparency in the technology, if it was used in illicit behavior in a sanctioned country 5, 10, 15 hops ago, what is going to be the responsibility of the banks? So we really need clarity from the bills to kind of pass to understand what's the rules and responsibilities of banks to play in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great answer.
Before interoperability kind of takes hold.
Any other panelists want to chime in? All right, so one of the things that we did kind of want to talk about is certainly the Genius Act, and Ryan, I'll stay with you on this one. You know, so when we talk about the Genius Act being passed, and it gives really, for the first time, you know, a federal framework for fully reserved dollar-backed stablecoins with joint state and federal oversight, what is the single biggest compliance hurdle, you know, you're saying maybe that your organization and others might want to be kind of aware of before they can kind of rely on this new regime?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time in D2C this year, as I'm sure everyone on the stage has, in regards to Genius and Clarity. And also getting, you know, stable coins and tokenized deposits are very different in nature. So worked very hard to get tokenized deposits segregated out of the bill, where, you know, tokenized deposits can be interest bearing, they're not one-for-one reserve, and we thought that was really important, one, because we had a live product that was starting to scale, but to be able to also keep the fractional banking system. For us, like, you know, to be able to, the whole M2 money multiplier, to be able to lend out money, to increase money was important. So with tokenized deposits, we can maintain that structure of fractional banking within the system. So I'd say with Genius overall, it's, you know, now giving kind of that clarity that the market has needed, and as well for us with around tokenized deposits.
Great. Well, as we look to close out the panel here and land the plane, Thorsten, I want to kind of start with you and we'll kind of work our way down here. You know, kind of looking at bridging the gap between Web 2 and Web 3, what is one way that, simply put, that we could help bridge Web 2 to Web 3?
Yeah, I would say like one big area is, I think, make Web 3 UX just feel a lot more like Web 2 to start with, right? I feel like today, like, we've come a long way from in Web 3, or if you go back to like 2018, everything was about like the technology, right? And like the UX was honestly not that great, but it was really about like proving out how these things work, and there were amazing products being built. And now I think we've moved more towards actually focusing on UX and simplicity, but I think we're still not quite there. Right? If you onboard onto like a crypto native Web3 app versus you onboard on a Web2 app like Revolut or like Robinhood or even like Coinbase, like centralized exchange, it's still a completely different experience, right? It's just much more seamless. And I think we're still not quite there, but I think there's a lot of good work in progress with like ERC 4337, like chain abstractions and smart wallets, and I think a lot of the technical changes that are sort of have come or in process, I think are helping, but I think we have a little bit of a ways to go still.
Right.
Yeah, I completely agree. In fact, actually, we're doing a lot of work with Vantage and the consortium we're building of banks to abstract away exactly that, so that it's only the power users that will really care whether they have a traditional tokenized bank deposit in their bank account or sorry, traditional bank deposit or a tokenized bank deposit, and you'll actually have to click through to be able to see the difference, because the whole idea is abstracting away the complexity.
Same thing, and I've said this before, most people do not care what's on the back end. They just want to know that it's easy to use, it works, and it delivers value. So whatever's going on in our lives today, if you introduce a new technology, it needs to be as easy, as efficient for people to adopt it. And I think it's as simple as that for bridging Web 2 to Web 3.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and you know, bridging that gap is really important. And you know, it's been extremely restrictive for banks also to participate in this ecosystem. I was actually on a fireside chat with Superintendent Harris and talking about, you know, in regards to Genius and Clarity, how do you want large, highly regulated institutions like us to participate in this space? Like, you know, we don't operate in the gray area. You know, we want to actively bank this industry like we did to, you know, the emergence of the PIs in the early 2000s, but we need that clarity about like what's approved and what's not approved before we enter it, but we definitely want to partner.
Great, great. Well, before we wrap up here, do our panelists want to have anything they want the audience to take away before we wrap up here? Anything in particular? All right. Well, I think that's a wrap for us. Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you to all my panelists as well.